Well, welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio. This is going to be a special edition of our Shabbat program this evening. We are going to devote, rather than the usual 90 minutes of broadcast time, 3 hours of broadcast time this evening to a singular topic, to the reasons that we have decided unequivocally to separate from Larry Hendricks and his unpopular truth Facebook presence. Today we have myself, I'm Craig. James is with us, as is Kirk and Dee. Dee is not a normal participant in our program, but she is an extraordinarily important member of our family, especially tonight. Jackie will be joining us. Jackie has just sent me an email, and the very thing that I was concerned about, the lines on the switchboard are totally full. She has tried several times. So all I can do, if she's listening, is to encourage her to continue to try. And during tonight's program, we will get Jackie on the air as well. Jackie has been asked to be part of this program this evening because she was instrumental as part of the group of covenant members who were asked to review the material that we have received over the last month regarding Larry and unpopular truth. I'd like to begin by reviewing something that I think is important in this context. Over the past 15 years, I've written the following books: In the Company of Good and Evil, Tea with Terrorists, Prophet of Doom, The Islamic Terrorism Timeline, Jihad, 7 volumes of Yada Yah, Questioning Paul, 5 volumes of An Introduction to God, and Observations for Our Time. It is a total of 20 books and 10,000 pages of personal experience, research, proprietary translations, insights, observations, and commentary, all of which is available free. Most of it is unique, life-transforming, and reveals profound and seldom, if ever, understood insights for the very first time. And over that period, I've asked very little of the reader and user of this material in return for being given free access to my research, my translations, and my insights.
We have Jackie on now, by the way.
Thank you. These restrictions include, 1, if you're going to use what I have written, you're going to quote it, don't misrepresent what I've written. Don't change those words. Convey what I have written as I wrote it. 2, do not take what I have written out of context. If you take a statement out of context, you can create the impression of somebody saying the opposite of what they may have said. 3, don't cite what I have written unless you have verified it for yourself and have come to understand what I'm conveying. The reason I say this is so many people get a little bit of knowledge and they go off half-cocked and they do nothing but irritate people with it. And then they cite that it was something written by me, and then whoever they irritated comes and hounds me. I don't need that grief in my life, and you're making you're not helping a situation. Don't quote what I have written until you understand it. So it's very important for people to appreciate things in context, come to a point of understanding, and then, by all means, use it. Number 4, never, under any circumstance, use anything I've written to justify violence or abuse of any kind. Lots of times I'll talk very critically, provide the evidence for doing so about religions like Islam and Christianity. But it is wholly inappropriate for somebody to be abusive as a result, to use that in an abusive way, or to use that in a violent way. The only appropriate way to use what I have written, the only way I'm giving you authorization to use what I have written is to use your words once you understand them, once you understand what is being conveyed. Never resort to abuse or violence. And number 5, do not cite anything I've written in conjunction with a conspiracy theory or fake news. We devoted, Kirk, 2 hours today on the observations program, along with Scott, on debunking conspiracies. We completely debunked the conspiracy of chemtrails, which is very prevalent, and with Larry and Unpopular Truth, of the inside job, false flag of the World Trade Centers, towers, of Building 7 of the World Trade Center, of vaccines causing autism, and we were just really getting underway. I do not want anything I have written cited in conjunction with these modern conspiracy theories, not only because truth ought not be mixed with lies, but because those theories destroy a person's credibility. And I do not want the credibility of Yahweh's witness, of his words, of his name, being besmirched in that environment. It is my conclusion that what is being done at Unpopular Truth, where they're using Yahweh's name, while not only being abusive to people, but constantly promoting the most nonsensical of these conspiracies, is a direct violation of the third statement, Yahweh etched in stone. It causes his name to be for naught, because it is being associated with rubbish. And that, as an ongoing practice, is unforgivable. Now, over these same past 15 years, I have spoken on 2,500 radio shows as an expert on Islamic terrorism, compiling over 3,000 hours of interviews. And on 2,000 of my own shows, either part of Yada Yahweh Radio, Shattering Myths, or more recently Observations, I have compiled over 4,000 hours of audio insights and commentary. I share this because it could be reasonably argued that I have made a significant investment and that I've asked very little in return. It might also be reasonable to conclude that I've earned the right to defend my translations and insights from being misappropriated and misused. There is a really disagreeable woman on Unpopular Truth that claims that I have no right to tell her that she cannot use my translations because she said they're Yahweh's words. Yahweh did not speak English. He didn't write anything in English. He spoke Hebrew. The text that I am translating are all written in Hebrew. The original text is not copyrighted. My translations of that text, you have no right to use them if you do not honor the restrictions that I have placed on their use. So, is that clear?
Sure. Pretty clear.
Those things said, let's, I'm going to read the letter that we wrote, and then we will turn to some emails and then posts from the Unpopular Truth site to verify that our assessment was correct. They have incriminated themselves. And following that, Dee is going to read and share her letter with us. It's an extraordinary witness. One of the most profound letters I have ever had the privilege of reading. And she's going to share it with you, read it herself on tonight's program. May 15th, 2017, regarding Larry and Unpopular Truth. Dear Covenant members, it is with a heavy heart that we announce today that we will no longer have any association with Larry or his Facebook group, Unpopular Truth. If you have entered into their company as a result of something I have said, Yada has written, or shared in his books or shows, our advice is for you to do likewise. Over the years, the most persistent complaint we've received claims that Larry, especially as part of Unpopular Truth, has been abusive, not only to outsiders, but to other participants within his group. And yet, since few of us have ever met Larry in person, have ever had a private conversation with him, nor ever been to Unpopular Truth, now there are some exceptions amongst today's panel, we brush these criticisms aside. That changed this past week. We received some very troubling information from witnesses who have disassociated from Unpopular Truth because they allege that they allege that Larry has treated them and others inappropriately. Their accounts appear credible. Their testimony is corroborated by others, and it is consistent with everything else I've heard. Moreover, the more recent witnesses were close to Larry and active participants on his site. This is not hearsay. The antithesis of that. These are first-hand witnesses, extraordinarily close to both Larry and engaged in Unpopular Truth. Moreover, as a result, it is our conclusion that we can neither neglect nor influence this pattern of behavior as it has been presented to us. We want to protect the integrity of Yahweh's message, and we want to protect from harm those who have read our books and have listened to our radio programs. So while we can do little to stop readers from being lured into Unpopular Truth as a result of Larry's stance on conspiracy theories and fake news, we hope to mitigate the damage done to those who stay as a result of his affinity for quoting our message. Also, we owe an apology to all of those who have written in the past regarding Larry. Myself in particular. I consistently sided with him rather than you. I am sorry. I was wrong. Although we have been given permission to do so, at the time we wrote this letter, it was our desire never to share the testimony that we received from these witnesses. It is horrific. But we wrote back on May 15th, if Larry or others in his group continue to use the translations and insights we provided in an inappropriate and harmful way, we will do what is necessary. And tonight we are doing that. We are appalled that our message and books have been used in this manner. It must stop. Now let's be abundantly clear. We're not police officers. We're not lawyers. We're not judges. We have no training in social work or psychology. So there is the possibility, however remote, that everyone who has written us, hundreds of people, regarding Larry has misinterpreted what they observed and heard. As for us, we're simply trying to do the right thing. Lastly, while we remain opposed to promoting conspiracy theories and fake news in concert with Yahweh's Word, had that been the only issue, we would have simply ignored Larry and his Facebook group. But when women allege they have been abused, it isn't appropriate to walk away. So it is for them that we are making this announcement. May Yah enlighten and bless us all. The signed, concerned members of the covenant family. There were 8 of us that worked together to evaluate the evidence and compose that letter. Let's share a few emails. James, you still with us here?
Yes.
Why don't you read the email that you sent to me just moments before the show began?
Yeah, I was just saying that you had talked about the importance of reading some of the latest posts on Unpopular Truth and how Larry has reacted to this, and I think that was important. I think it was important to highlight that because it says a lot about someone and how they react. You know, Larry didn't email you and say, "Hey, what's going on?" You know, I know we've had some differences, but what's up with this? He didn't try and find out. He didn't reach out to Lisa, who he's accusing of making accusations against him all over the place and belittling her completely on his Facebook. He didn't reach out to her to say, hey, why are you saying these things? He barely even denied it. Instead, he immediately lashed out at Lisa. Even when, like I said, by his own admission, he said he can only assume it's her. He doesn't know that it's her. So why lash out at her, even if it came from her? Why attack her? And, you know, why start sharing all of these things that she supposedly did that he hasn't told anybody? Why now and not earlier? You know, the only reason I can think of is he's trying to besmirch her character so that when and if her testimony comes out, it'll seem less credible. And from my experience, when someone lashes out after being accused of something, it's usually because that something's true. And, you know, a lot of people that are going to defend Larry and Unpopular Truth, they're, like you said, are there for the conspiracy theorist. And that conspiracy theorist mindset is, like you've talked about certain conspiracies, thinking of the Lusitania, the Gulf of Tonkin. But the difference between that and like a conspiracy theorist is the mindset of conspiracies are everywhere. And, yeah, that's how this appears to, you know, Larry is taking this. He's seeing this as just another conspiracy.
Don't believe credible mainstream witnesses. Don't believe scientists. Don't believe historians. Don't believe eyewitnesses. Don't believe the families involved. Don't believe any of that, because they're all conspiring to lead you astray. Believe that the dope that's down in his basement that is got an internet video blog.
Yeah, only my witnesses count. Any testimony you bring or any witnesses you bring, they're part of the conspiracy, so they don't count.
Of course.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like a Christian. You know, I've had this argument with Christians talk about 6,000-year-old Earth, and you talk about carbon dating. Oh, well, this one scientist did this one study, and because of this, that shows that carbon dating is not reliable. Well, no, we have 5,000 other studies that show that it is. Like I said, World Trade Center. They will point to one guy who says, oh, well, it's impossible for them to have collapsed this way. You show them where a group of engineers and scientists go, no, here's exactly what happened. Here's how it happened this way. Oh, well, they're in on it. They're just government shields. You can win any argument if you get to control what's considered reliable testimony. And so I doubt anything we do here tonight is going to change any of these people's minds.
Oh, of course. No. The diehards that are still abusive and of Lisa in particular, and now also abusive of me, and who are continuing to promote the wackiest of all of the conspiracy theories. There is no evidence that would be capable of changing their mind. And therefore, no matter what is said, even by people that know Larry much better than they do, they are going to discount it because, well, that's just their whole mindset. It's just like the religious person. If you tell them that this testimony comes from God himself, they'll discount it because it's inconsistent with what their group dynamic has led them to believe.
Exactly. And that was my final thing I said, was all we can do is the same as we do with Yah's work. Present the evidence to the best of our ability and let people make the choice from that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to share now some of the posts from Unpopular Truth. I have never been to the site. The reason I have these posts is a number of people have sent them to me. Probably 8 or 9 people have sent me screenshots, and so I've written down what was on those screenshots. Now, I wish I had all of them, and if I had all of them, I would share all of them with you because just one after another is even more obnoxious than the previous one. But since he did a better job of proving that he is abusive and that he should not be part of this group, with his own statement on his own Facebook page, we're going to read some of them to you. First one from Larry Hendricks, who, by the way, is pictured always wearing a white outfit with his arms outstretched as if calling people to him and drawing attention to himself. It's a picture I cannot imagine using unless you are doing those two things. He wrote, sadly, someone has made up some stories or lied to CW. Me. and Craig has made the determination that I should be banished, I wouldn't use the term banished. I was going to disassociate from Larry and anyone who wants to continue to be part of his Facebook group. I'll have no association with him of any kind, no correspondence, no dialogue, ever. Disassociation is the term. And, oh, by the way, it's not someone, it's well over 100 people. And
well, and banishment would be if you told everyone, anyone that associates with him, you didn't say, James, if you ever talk to Larry again, we're done. It was, you just said, I would encourage other people not to engage with him.
No, I will tell you that if you're one of the people, if you're one of the people who over the last 4 or 5 days has been belligerent and abusive on his site and besmirched Lisa in particular, but also what I have written, while and using Yahweh's name when I asked you not to do so, and you wouldn't know the name Yahweh, it wasn't for my book. There's no other place that explains the pronunciation as Yahweh. If you're talking about being in the covenant, which no one else presents the covenant in that way, and you're using my testimony and my translations while continuing to promote conspiracy theories, which is I asked you not to do, then I want to tell you, my separation from you, my personal choices, I will never have anything to do with you, ever. Dee was part of that group, and I was once a advocate of Larry, and I don't hold the fact that Dee was part of the group, and I hope that you all don't, although I've apologized, that I was once an advocate of Larry against me, because the nature of the third statement that Yah etched in stone, and the nature of don't bear false witness, is written in the imperfect, which means that the moment we stop doing it, we're no longer guilty of it. But once it's been made clear, and I've written one of the people who posted positively on that site because he's a very good friend, and I said, listen, be careful. You're the only person whose posts are such, and my relationship with you is such, and I'm going to give you this heads up. Be careful what you say. Listen to the show tonight, and I will tell you that if anyone continues to be abusive or violate the conditions we've set forth on the use of these books and this program, or defends Larry and attacks Lisa in particular, and now Dee, on unpopular truth, we will never, I can't say, I will speak for myself, I will never have anything to do with you, will never communicate with you again. That's not being banished. That is me making a decision not to be associated with that stuff. Okay? I don't want to be associated with anybody who is continuing to be hostile to Yahweh's teaching. All right? This goes on to say, I can only guess it was Lisa. Now, Lisa has written one of the letters. She has no idea what's coming tonight. Because Lisa's testimony, while riveting, while powerful, while compelling, while gut-wrenching, it was not the most powerful by any stretch of the imagination. For my part, I would just encourage others here to continue to study and use Craig's translations. No! No! That's exactly what I'm asking you not to do. You cannot use my translations in an environment like unpopular truth. Do not do it. I do not want you to do it. I never want you to cite Yahweh's name or any of the terminology that is found in my books or anything that comes from my translations or my books on a site that's as screwed up and as abusive as unpopular truth. Don't use my translations. I don't want you to do so. You do not have the right to do so. So it's the opposite of what he's saying here. I would also suggest that we be careful about who we help, as we can never know what their true motives are. Larry, throughout this, is projecting his own flaws on those he views now are his enemies.
Absolutely.
Actually, the greatest enemy of Larry is Larry. Larry did not help Lisa Lisa sought to help Larry. There's a picture, then a Mickend Joan made a post, and it's a picture of a dog crying hysterically. How rude. Someone's life is being ripped apart by Larry, being savagely abused by Larry, being made all sorts of egregious claims, which will be the basis of a defamation suit, by Larry. And she shows a picture of a dog crying hysterically. Then there's a Dwayne Longhofer, pictured flexing his muscles in a black outfit, and he says, "I'm here with you, Larry." We're known by the company we keep. Now, it's one thing, I was absolutely misled by Larry. I knew that there was a problem, and I continued to side with him, but when you are confronted with evidence that demonstrates that someone is acting in a grossly inappropriate way, you can't continue to do that. Larry Hendricks wrote, "Apparently, I am now a sexual offender." Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Did, Dee, you wrote the most compelling letter. Did you call him a sexual offender?
Not once was he ever called
No.
a sexual offender.
No. Did I call him? Did any of my correspondence, even private correspondence with any of you or public correspondence, did I ever call him a sexual offender?
No.
Not once.
Why do you think he came up with that term? Since it didn't
Came out
come
of his
from us.
brain.
You betcha it came out of his brain, because what he knows what he has done is sexually offensive. It came entirely out of his brain. They call it a Freudian slip.
Mm-hmm.
That, my friends, was a Freudian slip. First I'm hearing of this, and all from the woman that Yada and I flew here and took car of. Now, he didn't take care of her. He begged her to come, not once but twice, to take care of him. Now, when I first heard that she was there, I died 1,000 deaths. When I heard Lisa, who is a married woman, flew from, I think she lives in the Dominican Republic, to Jacksonville, Florida, because Larry had begged her, and Larry told me that he had asked her to come because Yalda was going to Persia, and he needed help because his hips were so bad he was effectively crippled. And he told me that he specifically had asked Lisa to come to take care of him while she was in Persia. So what Larry is writing here is the opposite of what he told me and the opposite of the truth. He did not bring her there to help her. He begged her to come there to help him. He is trying to present himself as a victim here, when in fact he was the victimizer. He then goes on to say, why? Well, her story is that her multimillionaire husband was trying to poison her. In actuality, it was Larry who went to great lengths to try to create this impression in Lisa's mind that her husband was everything from a homosexual to abusive, to everything that he could say to besmirch her husband. It wasn't Lisa that had criticisms of her husband. It was Larry who tried to demean her husband because Larry wanted Lisa to become dependent on him. Dee, is there any part of that that's invalid?
No, sir. Or no, sorry, I have it. Raised in the South. The only criticisms I've ever seen Lisa offer about her husband was simply that he is a highly functioning autistic savant. So he doesn't quite relate, as well as other people. But, she claims often how great at business he was, and it wasn't until Larry instilled in her that her husband doesn't particularly care for the Torah. And in this case, I really can't blame him because the example that the Covenant family has set is not desirable.
Yes.
Who would want to be a part of that?
Who would want to be part of that? Exactly.
Right. So it's not, it was very easy for Larry to make him her enemy using his hatred of UT and her correspondence with all of us.
Correct. Then started writing Craig. Yeah. Lisa has been writing me for years. Now, it's interesting. You know, Larry wants to have an up-close, personal, physical relationship with the women that surround him. I've only met one woman that's in the covenant. James, you know who that is?
Patty?
That's right. You and Patty were invited to a dinner with my wife, son, and I in Waco, Texas, many, many years ago. Your wife is the only female covenant member I've ever met. So it's a extraordinary difference here. And so he says that she started writing me. She sent me emails, and most recently her emails have all been on one subject, but one type. She's doing some extraordinary research that is really interesting, that has us all fascinated. From Roy down there in Australia, who's brilliant, you know, all the way to me, and I'm just fascinated by what she's found. And so I read, I respond to, and I share her emails. The email that she wrote me, this letter, which we'll present in this program, she did not initiate. I asked her. And the reason I asked her is that I embarrassed myself. And I sent, in the last letter that I wrote to Larry, I told him about how it's important that he needed to change his mindset on conspiracies, to give them up, that what he was writing and continuing to promote was just flat out wrong. And I shared Yahowah 8 with him because William had sent it to me. And I told him that I wasn't going to give up on him. At that point, I thought the problem was only conspiracies. I knew it had a tendency to be abusive, but I had no idea how bad it was. And so I sent Lisa, and I said, Lisa, can you help me reach him? Is there any way to save Larry from himself? And she wrote me back and said, no. And I said, what do you mean? No. She said, well, I guess I owe you a letter. I will explain. No. A 14-page letter, detailed as an eyewitness followed. So she didn't start writing me in this regard. Larry has made that up. See more. Then it says about how conspiracy people are not really in this group. She didn't write at all about conspiracy. I don't even know if she mentioned it. Oddly, Lisa is the queen of conspiracy, so all this too odd. I was sent a letter by somebody that sent me to Lisa's, I guess it was a Facebook page, and said, you know, I was here, and you better go there and read it. God, I wasted an hour. I thought maybe there was something there I should really see. I wasted an hour, and the posts, I'm not a social media person, but the posts were reasonable. They were interesting. And if you go back 18 months, I had to go back 18 months before I saw her and promoting a conspiracy, and even those conspiracies were not the nutcases. She's not presenting chemtrails. She's not presenting an attack on vaccines lead to autism. She's not presenting the World Trade Center was an inside job. None of the really nutty ones that are being presented on UT. And so to call her the queen of conspiracy is slander. He then says, I have set this group up, oh boy, thank you, Larry, to share Yahweh's words in extant form. No, he hasn't. That wasn't the purpose of Unpopular Truth. The purpose of Unpopular Truth was to promote Larry as a center of attention with a site that features conspiracy. He then found that by using my translations, he could draw more people in and keep them there because people were fascinated. They wanted to know about God, and they were fascinated by what they read. And so that was mixed into what they were doing. Larry is the king of conspiracy. I never expected and he can't spell woman. Every time he writes woman, it's plural, women. I never expected a woman to come in and try to destroy a lot of work. Now, let's be clear here. Larry hasn't done a single translation. When Larry makes a post, they're my translations and my insights. When he makes a post on conspiracy, he's even copying what somebody else has written on conspiracy. Larry hasn't done a lot of work. I have, but not him. And actually, the destructive force for the work is him. By the way, I have asked if a guy who needs two spelled T-O, hip replacements, was sexually abusing this woman. Did she try to get Yalda to go back to Iran to fly her back here to take care of me? Very odd. Yalda can back up what I'm saying, and feel free to call. Now, this notion that Larry is not abusive because he's got two bad hips, and I don't know what a woman shy is, but we're going to find out a lot about Yalda. I would not have brought Yalda into this, but Larry has brought her into it and is using her, and as a result, we're going to bring her up. Lisa never said that she was sexually abused by Larry. Never claimed that. Did she, Lisa? Or did she, Dee?
No, never.
No. As a matter of fact, we've never used the term sexual abuse because of the fact that all of the relationships he has been in, even though inappropriate, have been consensual.
Correct.
That's right. But Larry and Lisa did not have consensual sex or any form of sex, did they?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, not to my knowledge either. And she says, did not happen.
Right.
Very odd. Okay, so then Dwayne Longhopper says, I haven't known you a long time, but we shared a lot and broke bread together. You are a no-nonsense straight shooter and never would cower or cover up a lie. I believe you did do something was not considered above board. You would come clean. Well, no, rather than come clean, his whole tactic has been to be abusive. He says, oh, here, Dwayne. Well said, Robin Ball says of Dwayne. Boy, they're really drinking the Kool-Aid of this man. Larry Hendricks. Dwayne Longhopper has met with Yalda and knows her as well as Robin Ball. Yalda said that Lisa was insane. Well, I stood up for her, stood up for Lisa. That's hilarious. I was very foolish and based this on Lisa being covenant. I was wrong, and now Craig will be fooled, as well as everyone else who helps her. He's gone on full board to besmirch Lisa's reputation. Yalda is over here laughing. This is no laughing matter, saying that women are often about money and get hateful. She claims men are just too simple. I think she is right. Laugh out loud. Robin Ball, yet another vetted loon. Robin, I hope you are not covenant. Larry, I hope you're not covenant. I hope that you have applied the same lack of insight, judgment, and indeed sanity to Yahowah's message as I presented it in my books that you have to these conspiracy theories and to your defense of Larry. Because if you actually have figured out how to become part of the covenant based upon what I've written, I owe God an apology. Yet another vetted loon. So very sorry for your trouble, Larry and Yalda. You have been so very good to so many. Then Larry writes, William Padilla. I don't want to cast William in with this lot. He'll make his decision after this, listening to the show tonight. He says, apparently this all came from Lisa. That's not true. A woman who walks around naked most of the time, stoned all the time, has an interest in one's bank accounts, and lies most of the time. Inappropriate is walking up to some guy naked and asking him if he likes the way that her girly part is shaved. He didn't use that. He was more crude. Let's ask Craig if that might be appropriate. That's a hell of an accusation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately wrote Lisa. I said, Lisa, you have not commented on this statement. It's posted on Facebook, public statement. By the way, Lisa is not a public figure. So if Larry can't prove that, she will prevail in her defamation suit against him. Larry is a public figure as it relates to unpopular truth. Lisa's not. He's very, very vulnerable here. Lisa, you have not commented on the statement. Please let me know how you'd like me to handle this tomorrow. Craig. She writes, sorry for the delay in the response. It's the last day at home with my daughter. She's going off to college. I think this is disgraceful. And what response could I make? It is insane. He even spelled the word woman wrong. Lisa. I wrote back, Lisa, well, I obviously don't think that you walked around his home naked or showed off your body. I still had to ask because I'm going to read this accusation. It says a great deal about Larry. I want to make this point perfectly clear. If it happened, and it didn't, what man would make that kind of an accusation in a public forum about a woman? It is so, it's scum. A low-life scum. If you're one of these people on UT and you're defending this low-life scum, after you read that post from him, talking about her walking around naked and showing off her girly parts, you ought to, even if it occurred, which it didn't, you ought to completely disassociate with him because he is a low-life scum. That kind of post and proximity to Yahweh's name and testimony is reprehensible, even if it were true, and it is not. But by writing it, Larry proved that he was as reprehensible as we had concluded based upon the evidence. Says, while your answer does not change the fact that this statement is wholly inappropriate, is what I wrote, Lisa, I will word my response differently with your denial. That was the only reason I was asking. She wrote back, I'm going to make some phone calls on Monday, and I'm going to speak to the office manager in person who came to fix the stove from the maintenance crew while I was there, and I'm going to ask him for a letter saying that the accusation is false, and for him to give an account of my dress and conduct during the time that this false accusation of me being naked in front of strangers was actually made. This letter will become part of my defamation suit. Lisa. Now, Dee, you weighed in at this point. Do you have? I have it right here. I can read what you said, or would you like to read it? Do you have it handy?
Sure, I do. So I went to visit Lisa at Larry's apartment in October of last year. She was staying there during the winter months. In Florida, the winter is fairly mild, but for someone who's used to the jungle, temperament, it's very cold. And she had commented to her brother Jonathan on Facebook, who I'm mutual friends with, that she was freezing and needed a jacket. I brought her 2 jackets in person. And when I arrived, she was dressed to the nines in layers and layers of clothing. She had, I think, 2 shirts on and 2 jackets and 2 pairs of socks or 3 pairs of socks. With her tiny frame, she's maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. I'm twice her size. And with how cool Larry keeps his apartment, which is very small, I can't fathom how she could withstand walking around naked for any length of time. It's one of those he said, she said scenarios that are hard to disprove Lisa had commented to me that Larry would open up the door of Lisa's private room, which I did go into and sat on her bed while she sat in her computer chair and looked at her laptop. So I did see that she had her own room while I was there. And he would peek inside of her room. And when Larry stayed with me for 2 days during a hurricane, it was the same thing.
She's married, he's married. Peeking, well, first of all, forget even the being married, both of them, but peeking inside of somebody's room is perverted. It's inappropriate.
She never thought anything of it because we didn't at the time view Larry in any kind of light. We tried to just brush it off.
But he did that to you when you were staying there too, didn't he?
Yes. Yep.
And did it in front of your even when your husband was there, he did it to you.
Yes, he opened my marital bedroom door and peeked in on my husband and I sleeping twice while he stayed here for 2 days.
So when he was at your home, which he came to your home during I guess a hurricane, is that correct?
Yes.
And while he was in your home during a hurricane, he came and opened your door to your bedroom without knocking, without saying anything, to spy on you while you're in bed sleeping.
He never called out, nothing. And
That's
according
perverted,
to Larry's logic, it is. According to Larry's logic and his reasoning, based on using the Torah to justify sexual promiscuity, if Lisa was to have been walking around naked in his apartment, I don't think that it would have been very offensive to him. And anyone who knows Larry at all would know that he would probably enjoy it. So it's quite hypocritical of him to slander her for something that he himself enjoys and brags about often.
Larry has no personal boundaries. He doesn't understand boundaries. Somehow his judgment is cross-wired. Now, you also wrote, quite honestly, and with the way he speaks about women, you think, as you said, you just said that he would enjoy seeing people naked. He acts as if it were shameful and surprising to his eyes, and yet you would have guessed that he would have wished for it to happen. In fact, you're certain.
Yes.
Lastly, as Leilita and I, it's Lisa's other name that I guess maybe it's a real name and she just uses Lisa.
No, that is actually Robin.
Oh, that's Robin. Oh, Leilita, that's Robin.
Yes.
Okay. As Leilita and Robin, okay. And I left his apartment in October. Lisa came to visit. He said, why don't you read that? Because that is really telling.
Okay, so Robin, or Leilita, she's known on Facebook, flew in from California to visit me, and I took her by Larry's apartment. And as we were leaving, he made the comment, I hate to watch you go, but love to watch you leave. Both Leilita and I are married. And the comment, while inappropriate, was brushed aside as not being anti-Torah. And it's a very common tactic used in UT, where Torah is used to justify all kinds of inappropriate behavior because, well, that's just, being politically correct. It did make both of us uncomfortable, and it was discussed on the way home. And it was inappropriate.
Moving on back to the Facebook post, Larry Daniel, the sign-off, the signatory line says, may Yah enlighten us and bless us all, was how we as a group signed off on the letter. Concerned members of the covenant family. He writes, say what? Ba ha 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 ha. Wow. That's childish. Writer Aaron says, did I miss something? Larry says, concerning Larry and the Unpopular Truth Facebook group, Craig has asked me to share the following email here regarding Larry. It is with a heavy heart that we announce that we will no longer have anything to do with him. Oh, he says. And then Dwayne says, stop it, Larry. I'm like, so not into this. Like, so much drama. And what does Larry write again? Ba ha 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 ha. He just mocks people, doesn't he? If you're not in lockstep with him, he's either going to mock you or he's going to demean you. Are there any other options?
No.
Larry Hendricks wrote again, all this after Yalda tells Lisa that we will not invest $27,000 in her beauty cream business. I have a complete, long, and detailed letter, which I'm not going to share at this point. It serves no purpose, from Lisa on her business. She did not need money. She did not ask for money. She would never take money from Larry. This did not occur. Robin wrote, Dwayne wrote, well, if women don't get their beauty cream, that does sound abusive. The men, with a winking tongue, extended happy face. The next series of posts. Now, there is an issue here with there are a number of Franks. This happens to be a Frank I. And he writes, hallelujah, it's been a long time coming, and many witnesses were put together. Now, I'm not sure how he would know that, but that's what he says. Chuck wrote, wow, I became wary of strong reactions while recommending CW's books on Facebook. Brad Greer wrote, what do you mean, Chuck? I'm curious as to what you're talking about, and we may be of the same mind. Chuck wrote back, people wouldn't even consider reading Craig Wynn's books based upon the way they had been treated or seeing others treated on his Facebook page. I have so many times said, Larry has introduced my translations and these books to so many people. Well, the fact is, he has driven with his abusiveness far more people away from Yahowah than he has brought to him, and even those he has brought to him were only because of what I had written. Brad said, okay, no question. I agree. Thanks. There's a woman named Bridget who wrote, I was never badly treated by Larry. Love him. It's the crazy chicks and UT that turned me off. Boy, there's a lot of people that think there were crazy chicks there. By the way, if there were crazy and abusive people on UT, and they were allowed to abuse people on UT, whose fault is that?
Probably Larry. The leader of UT.
Yeah, the leader of the group. Yeah. Now, the fact is they were abusive and crazy because the leader of this group not only condoned abusive and crazy, but was abusive and crazy.
Yes.
That doesn't justify them being abusive and crazy if they were, but it points the finger at the very tenor of that group. Then Gina Lee says, I agree. Larry was always nice to me. It was the others, a few girls, that were the problem for me. Frank says, Jen Larry, whose real name is Jack. Yeah, I don't know if his real name is Jack Bauer, which is the name he uses in his business, or Larry Hendricks. I really don't know. I don't know if it matters, but you do need to know the man has two different names. A business name, Jack Bauer, and a Facebook presence name, Larry Hendricks. Is lied about you just like he lied about Dee and really just used those ladies to do his dirty work. He is a scumbag, trust me. He lies about people and misuses them in the name of the covenant and Yah's testimony so he can curse people out and then bully them. Bridget, when you were and others were out of the group, he would say the most vile things about you. And he was caught lying about many people, trust me. That was his group. Nothing went down there that he didn't approve of. I know you're no fan of Frank D., but are his conclusions in this regard accurate?
They are. I'm not against Frank, but
I know. We can talk about we talk about this today. In fact, there is a point where I'm actually going to make a comment on that. Bridget, then I'm glad that Craig Wynn is a rational, sane man. I have never been offended by Larry, but Lolita, LOL again, or whatever, and D were just nasty, nasty people. D, you don't strike me as a person that knows how to be nasty. I know that you grew up in a tough family. I read your letter, and I've talked to you a lot recently. I mean, you are really, really cultured in the way that you communicate at an extremely high level. well, I mean, and I know you're no longer there and you're completely separated, but would it be appropriate to say that while you were there, you were nasty?
I would say it has been appropriate to say I was nasty to certain people, and I will say and stand firm that the people I was nasty to gave me no choice.
Okay. If
And
Larry had said nasty, okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. If Larry has said nasty things about me, I am of no mind to believe that he was fed, it says the real word, but BS, because I did nothing wrong, said nothing wrong, and those chicks, they are just nasty. And this whole thing is, let's just blame somebody else. We're angels, but let's just blame everybody else. But I believe have deep-seated emotional problems. Yes, so glad to be away from all that. I don't know the truth of anything you're talking about. I figured CW was just really sick and tired of the conspiracy theories being branded about. Kind of glad to be out of the loop. Frank then wrote, you must have missed the story where Larry was bragging about putting shit and piss in the soap dispensers of his high school. Even as a grown man, he thought it was the greatest thing to commit a terrorist act against innocent people that happened to walk in there. He is a vile, vile, disgusting person. I really don't know what you mean by out of the loop when all the prominent people in that group have done irreparable damage to the testimony of Yahowah and turned so many people away. Whoa, yeah, missed that story. And still will want to want to hear more of it. Well, I just don't like talking about people that I don't know. It's a damn shame that UT is responsible for turning people from truths. Damn, learning the Torah is hard enough without the a-holes out there. I'm curious as to what Craig Wynn has seen and what has made him take the leap here. It wasn't a leap. Frank wrote, Larry, which he / jackass, told the story in his own post, bragging about it. I've been talking with Craig in emails before they started lying about me. I had already suspected that they were lying about Jen and others from doing my own homework. Craig, Yada, finally told me at least he knew it better because, as you say, he didn't throw them personally. It's hard to read. Some of the English is really bad. I continued to look for credible witnesses and sent them his way. I don't know which ones of the ones ultimately broke the camel's back. In other words, Frank was trying to say, you got a real problem here with Larry. I'm going to send as many people as you'll listen to tell you got a real problem here. And so he said, I don't know which one broke the camel's back. And I'm sure it was the preponderance and collaboration. His position is clear now. And those women you spoke of have created another group. Dee and Lisa, you guys have created a Facebook site called Shamar Torah, right?
Yes. Yes, we have.
Frank then wrote, these people are always talking about being butthurt, whatever that means. Sounds like they have some deep issues, LOL. Anyway, I never told Craig my story. Rather, I shared with other stories and tried to send as many people as I could his way. Maybe I'm wrong about starting the other group. I could see some prominent people in that new group, the same people who have made mischaracterizations about other covenant members. I don't think that's a fair assessment. Phyllis says, Frank,
no.
This is the problem with the covenant that has me confused as to who to trust for teaching. Dee, you were part of that group. Did Larry provide any unique teaching of his own regarding the covenant or Yahowah?
No, all of it was shared from your book. Or
so how could one be confused? Now I'm not telling. I don't ask anybody to trust me, but how could there be a decision between, am I going to trust the fellow that made the translations and wrote the book, or am I going to quote the person that cites the person who wrote the translations? And how could that be a question in somebody's mind? Okay.
I have no idea.
So,
it doesn't make sense. There's not a lot of anything that goes on you see lately has made sense. So.
Now, there are issues in the Frank story, and I'm just going to try to cover it very briefly. Frank was accused by Larry in the most vile terms, and I know Lisa or Dee that you did an investigation here to try to determine what was truthful and what wasn't. I'm going to tell you what I personally heard. It was the minutes before the show began, just like it did tonight, and we had an opportunity to talk as a group, and Larry was just in my face. And he was emotional, he was aggressive, he was vile, I've never seen him so inappropriate. And he accused this Frank, and it's not Frank Fromer of Frank's a very happily married guy and a really nice man.
Not Towrah on High, Frank.
Right, yes, yeah, not Towrah on High. Larry accused this Frank of stalking Lisa because he had a sexual interest in her. And the way that Larry said it, particularly with me knowing that his wife was in Persia at the time, in Iran, and that he had invited Lisa to his house to help him, and he is now aggressively saying, don't you have anything to do with that, and blankety, 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 blank person, because he's doing all of these inappropriate things relative to stalking Lisa. I'm going to tell you that my immediate reaction, based upon now knowing that Lisa was in his home with his wife away, the tone of his voice is that Larry had created an inappropriate, sexually charged, I didn't say sexual abuse, sexually charged situation, which was likely to lead to other people making inappropriate advances, not having proper boundaries, not respecting marriage just because he didn't respect it, and that he was now attacking Frank because he saw him as competition. Now, I know you did a lot of research on it. I'm just going to tell you, that is my experience based upon what I heard. That is my reaction when I heard it. I thought every bit of it was inappropriate. And I told him I don't want to hear any more of it before the show began. So Tracy Hoffman posts, who is Lisa? Larry Hendricks says, the only multimillionaire on the planet with one pair of shoes. Why would somebody say that? I mean, weird. Then he says, it's Lisa B, and he wrote her last name. A fraud of a person. This is the person he invited to take care of him that gave up 3 months of her life to take care of him because he was crippled. A fraud of a person. And a liar. He said, then Shannon Graham wrote, no one of importance. Lisa's no one of importance. I tell you what, she's important to me. She's important to you, isn't she, T? Jackie,
yes,
I know she's important to you.
Yes, she is.
She's important. She is important to those of us in the covenant family. We value her as a member of the covenant family. We respect her for being willing to take a stand. And she says, she's no one of importance, of all caps, a fraud and a liar. When I tell you that I don't want anything to do with these people, you're seeing why. This is then a real Paris, and I don't even know what it is, Polish last name, Januszkowski, I think. That's all we need. More of those. Bridget said, is this the Lisa?
I wish there was more Lisas.
Yeah, I wish there were more Lisas. Is this the Lisa that is sometimes on the YY show? Larry says, yes. Then he writes, a nut that told me that her husband was trying to poison her, which is why Yada and I needed to fly her up here. I know Larry personally told me why he had, because it was odd that Lisa was in his home when we were doing one of the shows, and he explained to me, I said, where is Lisa? Why is she on your line? And he said, she's staying here with me. I asked her to come in and take care of me because I needed the support while Yalda was out visiting her mother in Iran. So Larry told me exactly why she was there, that he had asked her to come, and now he wants the world, his little group, to believe that she came there because she said her husband was trying to poison her, which is why Yalda and I needed to fly her up here. Larry is presenting the opposite of the truth and trying to victimize her.
How do you
Bridget,
make up all this?
You know the entire circumstance because you were engaged in the group at the time. That Larry asked her to come because Yalda was going to be away and he needed the help.
Yes, and as I stated earlier. Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Dee. I spoke with Lisa for about 2 hours on the phone one afternoon while she was at Larry's. Larry was in need of her help, and he was thanking her for it, as I heard him in the background.
I mean, so Larry is outright lying in his presentation of him being the victim who sought to help Lisa, as opposed to him begging Lisa to come there to help him.
I would like
This
to
is
comment on the
reprehensible.
Pardon? I can.
Yeah.
I'd like to comment on the poisoning story because I was told something else. Larry told me after he picked her up from the airport that he brought her some pollo tropical, and that she couldn't eat because she said she felt like she'd been poisoned. That's what Larry said she said. And when I'd asked Lisa about it, she told me she never said her husband poisoned her. She said she felt sick. So Larry's told 3 different stories of the same account.
Yeah.
I just want to point
By the way,
that out.
I have been poisoned many, many, many times. You know what they call food poisoning? It's not intentional. I mean, I've eaten food at restaurants and got immediately and violently ill. It's called food poisoning. I've been poisoned a lot of times. To say I have been poisoned by something I ate, is very common. But to twist that to my husband is poisoning me, and then to have 3 different accounts about it, again, reprehensible. Bridget said, I've personally been taken aback by some of her statements, though I think her intelligent. Drama queen of massive proportions for my taste. Just saying. Larry wrote, Lisa is a drama queen par excellence. Why is he besmirching? First of all, I've read her. I've read 500 probably emails from Lisa on her research. I'm not seeing drama queen in it. I'm not even seeing any drama in it. Did you see drama in her?
No.
I've not seen drama in her.
None.
None of us have. Jackie, you've talked to her on the phone.
I've seen her upset, but not dramatic.
She's clearly upset. Yes?
I've not spoken with Lisa on the phone other than the one time when she was at Larry's.
Okay.
And she's delightful. We were talking about Yah. We were talking about different research she was sending me email pictures and wanted me to pursue some things, which I did, and we shared them back and forth. She's absolutely delightful.
That's the way she comes across in her emails. The way that she came across when she was part of the show. Then Shannon Graham writes, It is Yahweh's words, correct? Craig Wynn freely shares it, correct? So who is he to say that we cannot share Yahweh's words? Cult leaders speak that way. Evidently, Shannon Graham is unaware of the difference between Hebrew and English. She is obviously unaware of the difference between what Yahweh said in Hebrew, which she couldn't understand if her life depended on it, nor read, and my translations of what Yahweh said. My translations are mine. They are my property. And to say that you can't use them in conjunction with promoting conspiracies or in an abusive way is my prerogative. I mean, I am so stunned that a person would not only write this, but that comment would be allowed to stand in this environment by Larry. No, you do not have that right.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Well, you know, in the art circles, if I give you an illustration to use, unless I give it to you in writing, I own that copyright indefinitely. or if I give it to you, it could be a one-time use thing or whatever. I can put any conditions on it I want that you can use the art, and I'm sure writing is exactly the same way. It's intellectual property.
It's intellectual property.
You can demand anything you want.
Correct. Fred Snellwood says, would you yourself have found Yah without Craig Wynn's work? So if you were coming to know Yah due to his diligence and in his work, he sees that Yah hates conspiracies, and you are not then in opposition to Yah? I'm asking this because why is it so difficult to give up on these rabbit holes that keep people always wanting more and more? My question to anyone is, how many books have you written to date? If we haven't written even one, but ascertained the truth of the Father from the books of another person that he has written, and that person doesn't want his material tied to conspiracies, shouldn't we oblige that person and disassociate either his material from that or disassociate ourselves from conspiracy? Congratulations, Fred. Fred's always a good guy. Fred is extraordinarily right. But that's the facts. We can no longer, Larry Hendricks says, we can no longer expose Christianity anymore because it was a conspiracy. No.
That's very clever.
No, what a terrible, but it's irrational.
If one thing is a conspiracy, that does not make all conspiracy theories true. Right. That argument, that it's been made several times since this whole thing is in the last month now, and it's the most insane and irrational argument. You know, the Gulf of Tonkin was a conspiracy, therefore 9/11 is true. No, one does not equal the other.
That is correct. Mary McMahon says, yes, but I think the issue here is that she wants the details, the nitty-gritty. I had it in the other show where she's just saying, I got to have the facts. I got to have the facts. Of course, it's just for finding the truth, and she signs it SMFH, which I had to look up because I don't know the social network vernacular. It's another just really charming comment. It's shaking my effing head is what it means. And Fred writes, no, that's not what, you're wrong, Larry, because Yahweh exposes religion himself. I'm not saying that you can't look into the lies that men promote, but when you over and over start down that path, soon you're being engulfed in Babylon, because conspiracies are designed to keep us from seeking Yahweh. When Abraham left Earth,
Frank said it perfect in his last post. It's a rabbit hole. Why bother chasing down that rabbit hole?
Correct. Larry then writes, Yahweh trashes people that take part in conspiracy. And he quotes this from me, from Mashal Word Pictures, Proverbs 30:18. Says, in like manner, such is the way of the adulterous woman. She devours, and then she wipes her mouth and says, I have done all, committed and ordained, devised, fashioned, and forged, nothing deceitful or corrupting. That's not Yah saying, Yah is trashing people that take part in conspiracy. First of all, the adulterous woman is not a people. By the way, he writes it, woman, M-E-A-N. The adulterous woman is Satan. It's not a person. And what the quote is being stated in her voice, Satan's voice saying, oh, I've done nothing deceitful or corrupting. I've done nothing.
But you notice what's conspicuously absent here? Context.
Well, context.
There's no context.
And of course,
he quoted a single verse out of context.
Right. The citation that he quotes does not validate his errant preposition.
It never does when they quote him out of context.
And then he says, what makes up Babylon? Just religion? No. Well, that might be a true statement, but it has nothing to do with his point. Mary McMahon says, I don't think it has anything to do with Yah anymore. I think Shannon just wants more details. Larry says, Yahweh asks us not to be part of a conspiracy, exposing conspiracy. Yahweh asks us not to be a part of conspiracy, not exposing conspiracy. We're going to share later in the program exactly what Yahweh said in Yeshaya 8. And I will give you a preview, and it said, Yahweh said, do not speak of conspiracies. He didn't say, do not take part in them. Larry, you're wrong. He said, do not proclaim them. Do not articulate them. He was confronted with what Yahweh said and decided that he didn't like what Yahweh said, so he was going to edit what Yahweh said. Not acceptable. Fred then said, are they not designed, conspiracies, so that you can't ferret out the truth? And most conspiracies are designed just that way. So tell me, by what you're saying, and this is the truth of a conspiracy, just nothing more than your truth, because you can't make anyone think or go down that road. Nothing is accomplished by it. And Larry Hendricks says, you sound like a guy that does not think for himself, Fred. So,
which anyone who knows Fred is going to laugh when they hear that one.
Oh yeah, man! I would tell you, I've exchanged hundreds of emails with Fred. You better be on your game when you're emailing Fred. That dude's smart. Then Larry says, "Are chemtrails really not comtrails?" Question mark. Question mark. Are chemtrails really comtrails? Com is short for communication. I think he meant con, which is short for condensation. So he's right back to promoting chemtrails. I destroyed the myth of chemtrails today.
Are chemtrails really contrails? Yes, they are.
Yeah, they're comtrails, communication trails. They're really Morse code up there, like skywriting, and the way that the government is communicating with all of the reptilian, powerful invaders that have come here, and they're reading the secret
on how to conceal the fact that the planet's flat to sell globes.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Yes.
You make more money on globes than you would on a flat model, so we got to convince people that the world's flat.
Funny, I rely on no one, so I disagree with your assertion. And then Larry laugh out loud. And then Larry Hendricks writes, let's all play Craig is really God. Not a chance. Wow. That is just... If you don't understand why I want nothing to do with this man again, while I will never speak to him again, while I am never going to have an ongoing communication with anybody who is promoting him, defending him, there it is. Let's all play Craig is really God. Not a chance. Have I ever inferred that I am really God?
No.
Have I ever even inferred that anything I've written is from a personal revelation from God?
No.
No.
Have I ever claimed that I'm one of God's prophets?
No.
No.
Never.
You've always done the opposite. You said all of that available to everyone.
Yeah, all the time. I said, I don't know anything that isn't available to all of us. Everything that I have learned, I've learned by translating and then contemplating what Yahweh said. Wow. Fred, Larry, none are good, not one. Let's stop the ad hominem attacks on Craig went over and over. He admits that he's very flawed. But he asked that his translation material not be used with conspiracies. And I ask what's wrong with us when none of us are willing to do that. Shannon Graham, I want evidence. I do not need details such as names and addresses. Shaking my head. You wouldn't know what to do with it if it hit you in the face. Now, at this point, a Cherokee Bridget copied something that I wrote 15 years ago. It was Yada wrote in Parasago Clandestine Conspiracy. In this passage, we discover that Yahweh is a conspiracy theorist. He speaks of those who clandestinely conspire as if he had witnessed them plotting and perpetrating their deceit, their destructive and deadly schemes. And then, as he always does, he lays out the consequences of us tolerating them in our midst. I've made a habit of admitting when I was wrong. I was wrong. 15 years ago. I've edited Yada Yahweh 7 or 8 times. I didn't spend a lot of time, though, on the last 2 times through on the Greek translations because, well, quite frankly, Yahweh didn't speak in Greek. We don't have an extant version of 2 Peter. There's nothing that exists prior to the Roman Catholic influence in the 5th century of this letter called 2 Peter. We know for certain that Shimon Kefesh, the man's real name, did not speak or write Greek. He did not write the word parasago. I did not know at the time I wrote this how poorly the manuscripts had been maintained. I do now. And I did not understand the importance of not relying on Greek terms to make any decision. But also, to be fair, I have admitted, and I talked about it again on this morning's show, there was a period of time where I wanted a grand unification of the 2 most important, what are called conspiracies. I'm not sure they really are conspiracies, but the 2 most important evolutions of human control mechanisms. One is I wanted to be able to improve on the 2 Babylons, which is not considered credible because the references are no longer extant. And so I wanted to be able to demonstrate how the Babylonian religion morphed through the Greek religion, through the Egyptian religion, the Greek religion, the Roman religion into Christianity. And then I wanted to demonstrate, because Yahweh speaks a lot about the one world government that's going to dominate the world in the last 3.5 years. I wanted to see if I could trace that from the writings of Adam Weishaupt all the way through what he has predicted was going to occur. I spent about half my time for a year doing the research. I don't think anyone recently has been as thorough as I have in going to original source material to understand all this. I mean, I read textbook after textbook after textbook on the oldest inscriptions from the Babylonian clay tablets, for example. And I really made the effort. And I came to the conclusion that it is impossible in religion to make that connection. And the reason it's impossible is because it's way too confusing. The names constantly change. Their characteristics, their behavior, their relationships of all these gods is constantly changing in upheaval, even within the same country, before it moves from a different civilization, that you can't make it. It's just way too confusing. It's babble all the way through. And so it can't be done, which is why we should not even attempt to do it. And then with the political leading to one world control of the Torahless one, I came to the same conclusion. It's way too confusing. It's way too many centuries where there's nothing that is known. Way too many gaps. It just can't be done. And so not only did I learn that it can't be done, I also learned that it was counterproductive. Not only is it a waste of time because it can't be credibly proven, and what I learned is that even to attempt the smallest part of it is so convoluted that it would only appeal to a tiny portion of 1/1,000,000 of 1% of the population. But that even to advance them is destructive of one's credibility. So after doing it, I said I'll never do it again. At the time I wrote this chapter, I was in the midst of that because I still had some desire to value the Greek text. And so I decided, based on this text, that I would follow that lead. I know what it led to. And it led to this giant sinkhole. And so I just don't ever deal with it anymore. All right, then there's 12 pages missing. I was sent this, the last that we'll read from these posts, and then we'll move on to Dee's letter. Tracy Hoffman writes, did you give her money? And we bought this clown 2 tickets. Lisa's a lot of things. She is no clown. Wow. Well, this was all to help this longtime friend, this thief and liar. Now, you bought her the tickets because you invited her there because your wife was going to visit her mother, and you wanted her there to help you. Whose friend is she? And Larry says, mine. Ouch. Then he says, when did this happen? About 2 months ago. And then Sonia Young writes, thanks for shedding some light on the ticket problem. I'm understanding that that she was not put any money. I don't know what that means. I want to say here, after speaking with Yada, your wife, who corroborated what you said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry she has been lied to. We're going to find out that Yada is used by Larry, and that this has nothing to her credibility as a witness here is worth less than meaningless. You could say she's a victim, but she's also a collaborator. Then,
Can I shed some light on the ticket problem
yes,
as well?
Please.
Larry left out conveniently that she would be bringing her dog and all the luggage she owns in the world because she would have to stay in the United States for a minimum of 3 years before she could leave again. So he's forgetting to include all the extra luggage and the dog in those prices.
Yep. Yep. Then it says, I want to say here, after speaking with Yada, your wife, and it goes on to say, and you bending over backwards by opening your home to her, and her not using a debit card and turning over her Cadillac to a woman who asked for help. That's the opposite of what's true, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
By the way, I'll stand by my words when an individual talks to someone else's husband deliberately behind their back to insist his wife is a dictator and planning to leave him. That is a conspiracy. Boy, they haven't a clue what the word conspiracy means, do they?
A conspiracy. Yada told 3 people that story, myself and 2 other women, that she was planning to leave Larry. She emphasized on a repetitive basis that she wants out of that marriage. So it is not a conspiracy. And Lisa reached out to Larry thinking that his wife was abandoning him, not knowing the entire picture. Which, of course, Larry's not going to share that.
Now, I want to skip some of these emails. So I've got over 100 emails that I could cite, all to say exactly the same thing from 100 different people that I've received over time, all to say the same thing, that they've witnessed Larry being abusive. What I want to do now is I want to introduce Dee's letter. What you're going to hear next is the second of 2 letters written by someone who witnessed Larry's abusive nature up close and personal. She was the administrator for Unpopular Truth. Larry referred to her as his closest friend, which is pretty odd since you're half his age.
Yes, I thought so too.
And married. And he's married. She disassociated from Larry on Unpopular Truth 3 weeks ago. Her name is Dee, and she's going to read her own letter to you. It is long. I would not be surprised if she's still reading it a half an hour from now. But based upon everything that has happened, the consequence of what has transpired, the victims involved, the lies that are being spread, and the vitriol being posted on UT as we speak, it's worth our time. It must be done. It is the right thing to do. Before she begins, a warning. She's going to share some very disturbing observations. I want you to know that if it were not for the fact that Larry has bragged about abusing women who came to him seeking to know Yahowah, I would not bother to share any of this. And if it were not for the fact that Larry is using Yada, his wife, to substantiate his lies, I would not be willing to bring her into this discussion. But he has, so we've been given no other choice but to repudiate this ploy. After sending my introduction to her letter and asking her for feedback, she wrote that it would not be wholly accurate to say that Larry has abused women sexually, because Larry engaged in a consensual relationship with these women. However, his own depictions of these encounters affirm that in his words, they were abusive, or should be in her words, these words, they were abusive, as was his treatment of them afterwards. He explains, what I find abusive is not that he had sex with them, but how he treated them with such disdain and block them, even when they ask for more information about Yahweh afterwards. If you feel that equates to sexual abuse, and indeed he is an opportunist who uses his status, in quotes, in the family to prey upon the weak and willing, then I will concede to your preference in the wording. I also agree that using Yahweh's words to justify cheating on your non-covenant wife and the incestuous relationships with her family is abusive to Yahweh. Since we have come together to discuss this, I want to share something. What I'd like to add is I don't care what people do in their private lives. Their sexual preferences are of no concern to me. But I'm not only opposed to pedophilia and rape and incest and abuse of women. I'm devastated when my translations of Yahweh's words and insights in terminology, which is only found in my books, are used as a justification for sex. Now, I could be wrong. But prior to a few weeks ago, I think my only contact with Dee was a lone email, which she now regrets writing. We have never met in person. I have never talked to her on the phone. I know she is married and approximately 29 years old. I know she has courage. Her letter may be the most insightful, powerful, and important I've ever read. And it does not stand alone. Her witness has been corroborated by many, many others. What's more, I believe her, and I stand with her. That said, she's not perfect. While under Larry's influence, she said and did things that she probably regrets, as did I.
Yeah.
But consistent with Yahweh's use of the imperfect conjugation, the moment we learned the truth, we immediately announced our separation from him.
Thank you, Craig. I want to be clear that it's with a very heavy heart that I'm doing this show. Larry requested that I appear on the show several times prior to this, but I never took him up on the invitation. I'm only doing this show as a sign of my support of the truth and as a first-hand witness. That said, I would like to thank you for your consideration of the evidence and the due diligence you've taken in ensuring the situation was handled to the best interest of all parties. I am very glad you are standing up tonight to make it clear that no matter who is called into question, the truth will override all favoritism. It is important that there be no hierarchy in Yahweh's covenant family. It is important to stand up for those who are oppressed, especially when they are being oppressed by individuals who come in Yahweh's name. Here's the start of my letter.
By the way,
Dear Craig,
that's a lot of courage. I respect you for doing that. And what you're going to hear, folks, will be a blind side to Larry and his gang at Unpopular Truth. He has been lashing out at Lisa, absolutely trying to demean her character, lying about her in the most vulgar ways. The most revealing, most incriminating evidence regarding Larry has been provided and will now be shared with you by the person who knew him best at UT. What you're going to hear now is extraordinary. Go ahead, Dee.
Okay. So the letter began, Dear Craig, this is how the relationship with Larry developed over time and how Lisa and I were able to piece together what was really going on in the Unpopular Truth group as it morphed into a narcissistic playground and platform to bring strife front and center in the Covenant family. I've been a friend of Larry's for several years. I met him online in December 2012. For background purposes, I want you to understand how close I was to Larry. He has been to my house during a hurricane emergency for several days, 2 days. He came to a feast at my home. I had 15 other Covenant members, Albert Setner and Carol Dries, Lisa, they all, and I've been to his house for dinner on many occasions. Through Larry, I came to know his wife, Yada, and also our mutual sister, Lisa, who I do hold very, very dear to my heart. When I finally accepted, after looking through your books for a year, that I had the truth in my hands, I returned to Facebook, strictly to return to the Unpopular Truth group, and to reconnect and fellowship with Covenant family. I was very lonely without them and missed the family dynamic. It is this reason that I feel UT is dangerous. It was, until recently, one of the only places I knew to gather with family and discuss Torah away from the eyes of the world. It was UT or nothing, so it was made to appear. After Cherie passed on...
By the way, let me interrupt you for a second. Now there is Shamar Torah. By the way, there's also the Yada Yahweh chat room, which JB administrates, but there is also... the forum at Yada Yahweh, which JB moderates, and now Shamar Torah as a Facebook place where people can go, men and women, and just fellowship with one another on the Torah. No trauma.
Right.
Somebody questions it, and you know, is saying things that are silly. They're not going to be demeaned. They're not going to be abused.
Right. And it's not my group. I want to be clear on that. It's a collaboration of many covenant family members that has been in the works for months prior to any of this letter and anything that it contains. So after Cherie on, Larry made me an admin in the Unpopular Truth group. I did state that I would have preferred not to be in an administrative position, but Larry convinced me that Cherie wanted me to do it and that the family needed my help. I'm sure you have heard, which we have already discussed, that UT became a cruel and cutting atmosphere, and many people were pushed away due to the drama. Through conflict, loyalty was created, a hierarchy formed. This is clinically known as trauma bonding. What I was not aware of is that Larry was facilitating a rat race in the group, an intense undercurrent of secrets and whispering that caught even myself in its pull. Others will confirm that I have been desirous of leaving the group for quite some time. I couldn't put my finger on why, and so I suppressed my instincts and stayed. I would be asked to do things for Larry by proxy for, quote, the sake of the group. I'm too sick, he would say. I need your help, Dee, he would say, every time I wanted to walk away. So he would send me, like a dog, against people he did not want, did not like, or sought to control. I felt very sorry for him being sick and was happy to help my so-called family. Dr. Vaknin is an expert on narcissism, so I'd like to quote from him briefly. The narcissist, in contrast, is the mental equivalent of an alcoholic. He is insatiable. He compulsively directs his whole behavior, in fact his life, to obtaining pleasurable tidbits of attention. He embeds them in a coherent, completely biased, fantastic picture of himself. He uses them to regulate his and label his sense of worth and self-esteem. He needs narcissistic supply to carry out basic mental functions, primarily due to his ego. Without it, he crumbles and becomes dysfunctional. To elicit constant interest, he projects to others a confabulated, fictitious version of himself known as the false self. The false self is everything the narcissist is not: omniscient, omnipotent, charming, intelligent, rich, or well-connected. The narcissist then proceeds to harvest reactions to this projected image from family members, friends, co-workers, neighbors, business partners, and so on. If these, the adulation, admiration, attention, fear, respect, applause, and affirmation are not forthcoming, the narcissist demands them or extorts them. Money, compliments, a favorable critique, an appearance in the media, a sexual conquest are all converted into the same currency in the narcissist's mind. This currency is what I call narcissist supply. He, the narcissist, significantly cult leader, forces the participants in his cult to be hostile to critics, the authorities, institutions, his personal enemies, or the media. If they try to uncover his actions and reveal the truth, he closely monitors and censors information from the outside, exposing his captive audience only to selective data and analysis. This is hard for me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, but he is like he's speaking of Larry.
Yes.
It's speaking of the life that you once were exposed to.
Yes. This hits close to home for me on many levels. The narcissist cult is missionary and imperialistic. He is always on the lookout for new recruits, his spouse's friends, his daughter's girlfriends, his neighbors, new colleagues at work. He immediately attempts to convert them to his creed, to convince them how wonderful and admirable he is. In other words, he tries to render them sources of narcissistic supply. Often his behavior on these recruiting missions is different to his conduct within the cult. In the first phases of wooing new admirers and proselytizing to potential conscripts, the narcissist is attentive, compassionate, empathic, flexible, self-effacing, reasonable, and helpful. At home, among the, quote, veterans, he is tyrannical, demanding, willful, opinionated, aggressive, and exploitative. Fake narcissistic supply is tinged with ulterior motives and hidden agendas. Source of fake supply complements the narcissist in order to manipulate him or some third person, or in order to accomplish a goal. Endowed with cold empathy, the narcissist picks up on these true motivations and feels injured and slighted. Many narcissists test their sources of supply repeatedly. They engineer situations intended to expose the sincerity or lack thereof of the supply and the consistency and authenticity of the source's conduct. I would say, this was in the quote, that anyone who's been in UT can see how appropriate and specific that is towards
All you have to do is read what's been posted there in the last 3 days. And it's like their posts are a sign saying, that's what I am. It's impossible to miss.
Yeah, I've never seen Larry go this crazy. I mean, I've seen it get pretty bad. And to my shame, I even participated in a lot of the mockery.
Now, the reason he's going crazy, of course, is that he's losing his ability to recruit because he can't retrain members without his affinity with this show, with me, with my books, and he has over the last 2 weeks lost it by his own admission, lost an inordinate amount of his followers, and very soon, hopefully after this program, there'll be a handful of them, and all they'll be doing is belly aching to one another, and no one will care, and no one will be listening.
Yep. So individuals would come from within the matrix of UT and try to befriend the, quote, powerful people. There were some recent examples of this that I experienced personally. There was a fellow that I spent many enjoyable hours conversing with. He's incredibly interesting and disarming. But he openly admitted he had a goal to take the Covenant family to task. And once he cut himself in, I hoped he would relax. Instead, he then told me he would be unstoppable because we could no longer reject him. I'm in, he would say, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. And now he would bring judgment and fury to the family. He started with me, and we had several arguments. After I learned that he forced his wife and son to engage in Pesach, Matzah, and decorum, on threat of abandonment, I washed my hands of his presence in my life. But his attitude woke me up, the hierarchy in the group. I had become Larry's right-hand woman in the eyes of the group, and in doing so, I became a target. People perceived me as the leader due to Larry's projection of leadership on me. I was being used to bring credibility to Larry's game, and a game it is indeed. He was very fond of saying, "We've got the best game in town, Dee." In hindsight, it's chilling. For the record, I think this person that I was speaking of earlier is a symptom of the root problem. The group cowered to brutality because its leader made it clear that bulldogging and abuse are acceptable and even pleasing to Yahweh. By being loyal to Yahweh, he would in turn be loyal to you. And you can see how dangerous that motto is out of context. Again, we have the context issue. Let's talk for a little bit about Larry's wife. The first day I ever met Larry's wife, Yada, she pulled me to the side to tell me Larry wasn't really like her husband, but more like an uncle or a grandfather. She stated she could not bear to be with Larry, but that he needed her to take care of him in his illness. She said he was mean to her, and she wanted to go home to Iran forever. I was sad for them, but I said nothing. She's a Muslim, and I told myself that it must be because he's covenant. Every future encounter with Yada was an opportunity for her to urge me that Larry was not her husband in her heart. She made little comments about Larry dating other women and that she was happy for him. Little did I know at the time the other women were all brought into her marriage through the guise of the covenant. You can see how this would impact her view of the family and why she despised Lisa so much. It is my personal opinion that she viewed any and all covenant women as her competition. So by reassuring us, all of us, that she had no interest in Larry sexually, she would render herself non-competition in our eyes. It would allow her to covertly undermine other women while securing her position in Larry's life without conflict. In my current understanding, Larry is using the covenant family as a weapon against Yada to encourage her to compete for Larry's attention, thus securing his narcissistic supply in her. Another witness to this dynamic is Lolita. I asked her if she's comfortable to come forward and share her insights with you as well. She flew from California to celebrate Sukkot with my family, which I mentioned earlier. My husband and I hosted a party, and quite a few covenant family were able to join us, including Larry, who brought Yada. I noticed Larry mentioned that she makes great cakes, but you shouldn't eat them. And I want you to know, Greg, that he very much enjoyed her cake while he was here. I picked Lisa up from the airport in Jacksonville, and we had plans to stop by Larry's house so she could meet him on the way home. Larry was his usual magnanimous and charming self at first. We had invited Larry and his wife out to dinner with us, and he had agreed over the phone. Unknown to us, Larry had forced Yada to cook dinner at his home instead. You could imagine our surprise when we walked in, and Larry directed us to sit at the table and eat dinner with them. He told me Yada wanted to cook an Iranian dish too. Larry directed us to sit while Yada served us and waited on us. Upon tasting the food, he exploded with rage, ranting at Yada and shaming her for her disgusting meal, a meal he forced her to make, knowing she wasn't a strong cook. He berated her for the entire meal as we awkwardly sat, trying to soothe her. Every attempt we made to diffuse and deflect his rage was met with even louder protests that we didn't need to lie. It's clearly disgusting. We finally fell silent as Yada sat crushed and dejected at the table. Lolita became noticeably uncomfortable, so I urged that we had to be going soon. I blew off the incident to Lolita, saying that Larry had a bad temper and apologized that she had to see that. It was very rude, but of course I chalked it up to Larry being old and rather grumpy. And that's what we do, isn't it? We make excuses for people and their behavior because we care about them, and also we think that they're doing good for Yahweh's message, so we should support them. And I'd like to
I made that mistake. I made that mistake over and over and over again, and I want to say I was wrong. Yeah. I apologize.
And I with you, because I also supported him despite the clear evidence, and I encouraged him, and I hurt people, and I'm sorry to all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, the evidence was overwhelming.
There were a few cases.
For all of us, it was overwhelming. Yes. And we all, particularly for me. And I ignored it. I was absolutely wrong, and I am extremely sorry.
Yeah. There are a few cases where the truth was the reason that I was nasty to people, but I felt even then it was above and beyond necessary because that was the MO of the group. So I want to note something about my character that I hope will enlighten you. I can reject his abusive behavior. I have a very crude and abusive past myself, and I'm not easily shocked. It's easy for me to dismiss abuse because I lived in an abusive environment most of my life. I would consider myself as a sufferer of cognitive dissonance, and I have much to learn, and I know it. So it was shortly after this incident that I wrote a letter to you, Craig, in support of Larry's character, which I deeply regret doing. It was the trigger Larry needed to take our relationship to the next phase of what is clinically known as grooming. He wasted no time. I am thankful as well. Because of this, I was able to get close enough to Larry to see what he really was in time to help Lisa before she was destroyed by him. I have zero doubt that he would have destroyed her emotionally and that he would have enjoyed it.
By the way, he's close to doing it. His most recent rants on his Facebook page and what he's been telling people are very close to doing it. And he is unbelievably susceptible to not only defamation of character, slander, libel, but far worse.
Yep. So Larry would privately confide his emotional distress to me on the phone. He would tell me how Yalda mistreats him, even claiming that she would fly into rages and abuse him. I later learned it is actually the other way around. A narcissist likes to create a feeling of exclusivity in his relationships. He was fond of saying things like, "You're my best friend, Ace. You get it. A lot of these others just don't. And the covenant is a lonely place, see? We've got to stick together." I was perturbed when he told me I was his best friend. This was the last week of our contact. I don't know what kind of 50-year-old man or plus is best friends with a 29-year-old. Not to mention that I'm married, and considering that we don't pal around like besties, I just think it was very odd, a very odd thing to say. It did raise a bit of an alarm for me. Anyway, he told me stories about covenant family screwing him over, and that he would impart any dirt he had on them, thus making me in his mind just like him, as an accomplice. As a friend, I would listen. Privately, I was sad. He told me not to say anything, and I said I wouldn't for the usual. And he would laugh at me and say, "I know you won't, Dee," which is like a slap in my face. I was under a code of silence, and I put myself there. But I swallowed my feelings and continued to say nothing. If he wanted to vent, that's fine. At the time, I felt it didn't mean it had to be my problem. Larry would call me at all hours, even calling at 1 a.m. recently. He would reminisce to me at length about his escapades. As time went on, things began to take a darker turn. He began to regale me with inappropriate stories of his sexual encounters, most importantly, women within the covenant family and or those seeking Yahweh's words. My husband overheard several of these conversations, and 2 other women who happened to be with me during some of his phone calls. My sister Sarah and Lelito also observed some of them. All of us were disturbed, but we tried to view things through the lenses of the covenant, as Larry would put it, and accept that Yahweh didn't care who Larry slept with. I finally could take no more of his stories when he told me he had sexual relationships with both of Yalda's aunt and her sister in their home.
Can I interrupt you here a moment? Let me just interrupt you here a moment, because it's not, I don't think it's part of your letter. I could be wrong, but wasn't Larry's explanation that God doesn't give a damn, doesn't value non-covenant people, so they were his to use?
Yes.
So he would have incest with Yalda's aunt and sister, and he would have sex with people seeking to know Yahweh that were drawn in by his citation of my testimony, and then berate them and call them whores afterwards, demean them, and send them off, and justify it by saying, "Hey, they aren't covenant. God doesn't care about them. I can use them any way I want."
Yes.
Now, if anyone has any doubt as to why I said I would never talk to this man again, I hope that doubt is fading.
You know, it's when he would talk about this story, it was like he was reliving the experience. You know, you mentioned earlier when he was talking about Frank, and you could feel the sexual tension and the excitement in his voice, and you could just hear him reliving this experience in his mind, and it made me feel dirty just to hear it, because it was just too personal. Those are certain things. For one, you wouldn't share with a 29-year-old woman, especially a married woman. But for 2, I'm not a man.
Share that with any woman.
Well, you wouldn't do
I
this.
don't hear enjoying.
What he's doing is reprehensible. You don't do this. Every aspect of that is reprehensible, and then to brag about it like it's a good thing is even more disgusting. And then to share it with your bestie, your administrator of your site, as if I'm enjoying reliving it by telling it to you, is just revolting.
Yep.
This is despicable beyond fixing.
He would notice that I would shut down when he talked about it. It's really, I didn't have much I could say. I have no relation to it. I can't identify with it. So I would just get really quiet. And he would say, "Hey, Ace, you're a good pal. You know, thanks for listening." He'd laugh it off. I know, I'm an asshole. And I would sigh with relief, like, oh, good, he knows exactly what I'm thinking, because really he sounded like an asshole, and I told him many times, you know, you really are an asshole. And he'd laugh and say, yeah, but you get it, Dee. You're just like me. Which just blew me away. I'm nothing like Larry. I had a great deal of respect for him as someone who showed me Yahweh's words and who would encourage me to seek Yahweh's words. But I don't need this on the side. This should never be presented in side by side with Yahweh's words. Never.
You can't use Yahweh's testimony to justify having incest and having sex with women who are seeking him, only to call them whores and send them off.
Yes.
There's no part of that that's acceptable. There's no part of that that's tolerable. It makes me disgusted to think that this man used my translations to lure people into that situation and then bragged and justified it based upon what Yahweh said. I'm flabbergasted. I feel violated. It's just unbelievably inappropriate.
I'm pretty sure that there is a reference in Torah to not making enemies out of sisters, as far as a man marrying a sister.
Oh, there's one about not in the Torah is explicit about incest. No, you don't do that.
And there was examples such as, Rachel and Leah. I don't know their Hebrew names off the top of my head, but, the covenant is a living document, so improvements were added as needed as time went on, and it's very clear.
Well, and in that case, he married them. God didn't tell him to marry them, and it was made very clear that it was not a good situation.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, Dr. Zachman, who I quoted earlier, he wrote this: to avoid painful contradictions with reality dissidence, and also to ameliorate his raging abandonment or separation anxiety, the narcissist aims to micromanage and control his human environment by subsuming it or by merging and fusing with it, exactly as codependents do. His nearest and dearest are reduced to mere representations, avatars, and extensions of himself, or internal objects.
Yeah, the people were objects.
So,
the people that he used were objects.
yeah.
Not good.
Including me, in a sense, because he seemed to enjoy lumping us in together as the same person, as if I enjoyed his abusive story.
Yes.
Lisa came back to stay at Larry's for 3 months in October. I visited a few times. This was her second visit, by the way. When I could visit, and I enjoyed. Yeah, she stayed for 2 weeks, a very brief period of time. And as we discussed, the narcissist has like a honeymoon phase. So 2 weeks went by well, no complaints. He invites her back for another 3 months. She comes back at his request. So Larry would talk about how awesome Lisa was, how insightful, and he would sing her praises at every turn, which we all heard. He would disparage Yada, that she was a religious whore, that she was abusive to him. Larry called me and asked me to find out the truth when the Frank situation ensued. And I found that Lisa was correct, that Frank had read too far into the relationship. I am fully in agreement that Frank was being gaslighted by Larry. And I think more damage was done to Frank than was likely necessary. I think Frank was delusional about his relationship with Lisa, but I don't think
But he was a victim of gaslighting. Gaslighting is the deliberate manipulation of somebody that is evil.
Yeah, I think
for very inappropriate purposes.
Yes. And I think he
Yeah, in fact, I
used
think he
that
was actually
situation to make
positioned
himself a hero.
to do what he did so that Larry could do what he did, which he thought would endear himself as Lisa's protector. And
it worked.
and so it was a very disarming tactic. I mean, you can't say that, well, Larry is extraordinarily rude and vile. I don't want to go into psychological analysis, but these tactics are clever.
Yes. Yep. So Lisa went home, and Larry called me to tell me that he was very glad that she finally left, that Yada hates Lisa, that he would end up getting divorced if Lisa ever came back because Yada was jealous. And he claims that Lisa was rude and racist towards Yada and her family because they're Muslims. He said he only needed Lisa to come help him while Yada was in Iran. And he said he liked Lisa, but that she had mental problems. He would ramble for
Again,
hours.
everything he's saying, he is projecting his own faults on her. Every one of these faults is his own.
Right. Absolutely. So he would say that she was disturbed, that she was gullible, that she was foolish. I was very blindsided by this because up until that point, I thought Lisa was his golden girl. He would occasionally disparage her interactions in UT, but he does that with everyone, and I do mean everyone, including Shannon Graham, who should know. But I brushed it aside as a character flaw. But aside from that, I thought Lisa was golden in his eyes, and I wanted to help him. So in my effort to help him not get into a predicament, I offered my home for Lisa to stay so that she could be safe and so that Larry would not get a divorce. And at first, Larry went along with this idea. Let me scroll down. Sorry. Later, Larry warned me that Lisa is really good at spending other people's money. D, you don't need that kind of financial drain in your life. And he told me, I'm just trying to help you out, but don't tell anyone what I'm confiding in you. So again, I couldn't say anything. I couldn't confront her, just be silent. This is the game he played on Yada and on Lisa. He would disparage Yada, he would disparage Lisa, then he would lift them both up. How wonderful Yada is, how wonderful Lisa is. And I, as the gullible friend, was his audience. In the meantime, Lisa would be calling me from Dominica to tell me how kind Larry and Yada were, what wonderful covenant brother he was, how he protected her, how he opened her eyes to the dysfunction of her husband, a man he never met, that she would be so lost without Larry's help. She told me of Yalda's kindness and of Larry's strength.
And by the way, the building up and tearing down, constant building up and tearing down is disorienting. And that the world, the web of lies that existed there is very disorienting. So if you completely disorient somebody and then you project false claims against their husbands and false claims about yourself, they're more readily believed because you are so disoriented. All part of the tactic.
Yes. And I told Barry that I didn't want to be in the middle of it, but he wouldn't stop calling me. And he would say, I'm just telling you, Dee, I'm not asking you to do anything about it, but you need to know in case she tries to suck you in. He would tell me, I know what she's doing. I'm the only one who can really help her, which, say, what a savior complex.
Yes.
I mean, you're the only one that can help her. Come on. So here I was, listening to Lisa cry very bitterly, mourning the loss of her marriage and her home. And on the other hand, Larry enticing her to come to his home, and enticing is exactly what it was. Knowing full well that Yada hates and that he would pin his imminent divorce on her as a guilt price for his help. Larry planned for Lisa to take care of him while she financially depended on him, emotionally depended on him. It is classic exploitation. At this stage in the equation, I had Yada pegged as the manipulator and the mechanism. I saw Larry as a willing participant in her schemes out of desperation. I mean, he can't walk. I thought he was just going along with the flow. I thought Larry was blind to the big picture, and I could not have been more wrong. At this point, I thought Yada wanted Lisa to come so that Lisa could take care of Larry while she ran off to Iran for 3 months. Even though Yada hated Lisa, again, this was according to Larry, until the end, Yada never spoke an ill word about Lisa to me directly. Larry's surgery, and I will add that when she did so, it was with Larry's pressure on the phone. Larry's surgery was coming up, so it was logical that Lisa would stand in for her. Someone has to. He was telling Lisa, I'm covenant, you're covenant. We'll help each other out through this hard time and be safe. Dr. Vaknin quoted this, or wrote this, and I'm going to quote him. The narcissist does not respect the boundaries and privacy of his reluctant adherents. He ignores their wishes and treats them as objects or instruments of gratification. He seeks to control both situations and people compulsively. He strongly disapproves of others' personal autonomy and independence. Even innocuous activities such as meeting a friend or visiting one's family require his permission. Gradually, he isolates his nearest and dearest until they are fully dependent on him emotionally, sexually, financially, and socially. So as a friend, I made a choice. I could not bear to sit back and say nothing while Lisa threw her whole life into the hands of a man who was lying to her about his intentions and who was being manipulated by his, at the time I thought, poisonous non-covenant wife. It just isn't right. It was one of the hardest decisions that I've made in years, and I agonized over it for 2 weeks. But it was the only right thing to do, so I told her what I had observed and had been told. My motivation for doing so was simply to keep her, my sister, and part of my tribe from being used by Yada and by default Larry. But according to Lisa, everything Larry had told me was a partial, twisted truth. From what I and my husband witnessed, it seems that Larry took advantage of Lisa's delicate emotional state in the worst way someone ever could. He filled her head full of ideas that her husband wanted to harm her, that he was a homosexual, that he never loved her, that he was using her as a caretaker, which is total projection. It was Larry who never loved her. It was Larry who wanted to use her. After Lisa made the decision to look at the situation objectively, she decided to take more time to address the issues in her marriage that have come to Larry so soon. All that changed when Larry could not, I skipped a part, when Larry could not push Lisa to come immediately, he switched on her. In a frenzy, he called me, and he appealed to me as a friend to tell him why she would not come. So I told him the truth. I told him about Yada telling the women in the covenant family that Larry was like her uncle, that it wasn't fair to put Lisa against Yada. None of it was right. He was upset with the information, but he understood, and he thanked me for having, quote, the balls, to be honest. The next day, he called me and said he'd talked to Yada, forced her to get on the phone against her will and to apologize to me for her lie that she viewed him as an uncle and make up an excuse about how that's a compliment in her culture. He claimed they had figured out what Lisa was up to. He then claimed Lisa wanted to run Yada out of the equation so that Lisa could move in and take over. That Lisa had likely stolen exorbitant amounts of cash from him by getting cash back on his credit card, and that she'd likely taken the money and purchased dresses with it. He said that Lisa refused to come not because she was a victim, but because she could no longer victimize Yada. He told me Lisa had a mental meltdown and hid in a closet in my house for 2 weeks.
By the way,
I was
cash back on a credit card. It's a man living in a small apartment.
Yep.
Cash back on a credit card of a person who is financially in that position, which is 1-2%. I'm going to tell you, could not even amount to a minuscule amount of money, much less a sizable amount of money. So his very testimony, here is ludicrous.
Yes, it is. And I don't know if Larry is aware of this, but you can't get over $100 at a time on cashback. And he would claim that she would spend $500 at the grocery store, most of which was cashback, and then deposit cash into her bank account, and then buy dresses with the money. Well, Lisa has proved
it's impossible.
There was. Well, she proved there was
the
no
man's
cash
stories are
deposit
so
thing.
insane. It's impossible. Beyond the fact it didn't
And now
happen,
she's
it
changing
couldn't
her
happen.
story. No, it couldn't. Especially not in the amount of $4,800 or whatever he's claiming now. It
And
started
by
out
the way,
as
if he's the holder of
$1,800.
the card, she wouldn't have access to it.
He claims that she denied ever having the card. She went and bought groceries with it so that I could come over and eat lunch. And I have messages from Larry stating that Lisa was at the grocery store with his card. So I don't know why he would claim she never saw it, or that it was stolen, which is just bizarre because crazy. Like, the story has changed 3 times. So, when he said all this stuff about Lisa, at this point I was just appalled. I just oohed and awed the way that he requires, pretending to be in a state of shock. But my mind was just racing. I began to question my judgment in the situation. I had just stepped in between 2 covenant family members just to try to make sure Lisa wasn't being taken advantage of, thinking Larry was being manipulated. And I needed to know at this point who was lying. To do that, I would have either had to ask Lisa outright to confirm or deny Larry's allegations, but I was asked not to reveal them to Lisa. So by doing that, I would have violated Larry's trust. The only option available to me was to test Larry's integrity. It was the least volatile course of action, so I conducted an experiment on Larry. He is adamant that UT is leaderless and that we are all equals. This is painful to read, but ironically, Larry is fond of trashing Kirk Miller and Kirk a bore and a yes man to Craig.
By the way, Kirk, I would take that as a badge of honor.
No, I am. I wrote a note over here. I'm thrilled to be hated and insulted by this man.
I'm now with you, because he's insulting me all the time now too. So we're in the same boat here. And so since we're in the same boat, I would consider that a badge of honor.
Okay, well, I shouldn't say yes to you,
by it. I wear it.
I'll just say this, from my opinion, and for what it's worth, my 2 favorite people to hear on this show are Kirk and Rory.
Yeah.
And for the opposite reason. Kirk has that artistic mindset, which is so different than mine, so I learned so much from him. And Rory has that very scientific mindset, which is what I have, but he's so much more informed and intelligent than I am, so I learned so much from him. Those are my 2 favorite people to listen to on this show.
We've probably done 20 shows on his research, whether it was the research he did on Woodrow Wilson or the research that he did on the Exodus or the research he did on the Amalekites. His research is just spectacular. So I wouldn't let this bother you. Don't let it bother you.
No, it didn't bother me. Listen, I like to hang out with you guys because I learn something all the time. So it's a mutual, hopefully it's a mutual admiration society because everybody brings something and I just go, wow.
We're fond of
it's the most fun you can have,
that's my view. It's the most fun you can have. And by the way, this is...
So you don't have to be loud to be interesting.
No.
When we're finished with this program tonight, we will never talk about him again. We will return to our Torah discussion. But it's important we get all of this out, and we're doing this because he is being so vicious, and he and his group are so ruthless, particularly to Lisa, that it is not acceptable. And they're continuing to intermix my translations and the terms that are in my books with their abusiveness, their rudeness, and the idiocy of their conspiracies. And frankly, it's just got to stop. So I know there's people like, for example, my friend William is listening today. I know there's people that need to decide, because they've known Larry for years, as I did, and I was his friend, and William's been his friend. We need to decide whether or not we're going to disassociate from the man whose life is being exposed for us. So it's really important we deal with this. For Lisa, it's important. For Dee, it's important for you. But for all of us, and for the value of the testimony that we have learned from Yahweh, it is essential that we understand this, and that we condemn it in the most blunt and bold terms.
Yes. So
I'm sorry for interrupting here.
No, it's fine. It was a good laugh. Gotten to know Kirk a little bit over the Shabbat chat, and I've really enjoyed his insights, and I'm happy to get to know him. So
you like these pansy men's, right? Yeah.
I refuse to refer to you guys that way.
What do you call me? I'm a dork. Yeah, his term for me is dork, and you're a pansy.
I'm sure he'll come up with a new pet for me.
Oh, well, yeah, he's
so
not going to be happy
also,
with you when he hears this.
No, but that's okay. Larry is also quite proud in telling people that you, Craig, need him on the show to liven things up because the presentation is so boring. So, for my experiment, the next time Larry called, I began to ramble that the show was so boring without him on it, which he heartily agreed. He told me he had a hard time listening to it since he'd been so mistreated by you over the conspiracy stuff. I told Larry he should get back in the public eye of UT because we needed him to, quote, lead us in the right direction in the group. I chose this wording specifically. I needed him to correct me, to affirm that there are no leaders in UT. His response, or in the covenant, period. His response was, yeah, you're right. UT does need me. The show does too. I guess I am the leader. It's time to admit it, D, I am the leader. And then he laughed in the most self-congratulatory manner I've ever heard. That was the day that I made myself non-admin, and that is why 2 days later I left UT and I blocked Larry on Facebook. Dr. Vakman, I'm going to quote him again.
I want to interrupt you just 1 second here,
yes.
Because I think the covenant actually does have leaders. I think Yah's made it pretty clear that Dode is a leader. He's going to establish the kingdom of Dode when he returns. And he's specifically said that Dode is my son. So I'm absolutely convinced that based upon what Yahweh said, Dode is if not a leader, the leader of the covenant. Now, Moshe, when Yosha speaks of Moshe, it is with great, great respect. And so I am quite convinced that Moshe is not at the same level as the rest of us. Yeah, and I want to tell you that
he was literally a leader. He led them
out. Yeah. Yosha ben Nun. Right, Yosha ben Nun.
Yeah,
he is not at the same level. Abraham is not at the same level that we are. It is Yahweh's prerogative to treat some of his children differently than others of his children. That doesn't mean that we're going to be deprived of anything. We're going to get more than we can possibly imagine. But there are leaders of the covenant. And I think it's appropriate for there to be leaders. I'm glad there are. By the way, I'm glad I'm not one of them.
I was about to say, I don't want to be one.
You're looking for your demotion, are you?
Yeah, but I'm looking to promote Kirk because I really like pansies. This dork is going to recommend you. No, I think the person we're all going to recommend is Jackie. Jackie is just kind of the most
she's the most
reasonable person. We're going to recommend Jackie to be the covenant leader.
Okay. I'll leave it to all of you.
Okay.
I did.
It should be said because this is really so much of this is depressing. We're laughing now because there's really no other reaction to it. But if it were not for Jackie,
laugh or cry, I prefer laughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think if it were not for Jackie, well, I can tell you for certainty, if you hadn't stood up for Lisa, Larry would have devoured her. he would have crushed her.
Yes.
And I will tell you that if Jackie had not intervened and also reached out to Lisa, I don't think that she would have survived this. So there is a lot to be said about the power and the influence of both Dee and Jackie in this particular case. These are extraordinary women who took an extraordinary stand and devoted enormous amounts of their time to doing this, and I can say I appreciate you.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
We appreciate you too. I can safely speak for all of us when I say that. So,
only in the sense we're family. We're enjoying learning together, and I can promise you, once we remove this cancer from our midst, and people understand why this cancer is being removed from our midst, we will never speak of it again. We're going to return to learning what we can from what Yahweh has shared with us.
right.
May I say something?
You may.
On behalf of Lisa, thank you. On behalf of Lisa, who I've been visiting with, as well as Dee more so, but I've spoken to her a lot, and she is crushed. And I'm reading her letter, as you know, later.
Yes.
But I do want to thank all of you and everyone who did the research to find out the truth in the situation, and everyone for coming to her support. She was so in need of this family.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting that we've actually compiled just for this program, and we'll probably only cover 60 pages of corroborating material, 60 pages of other witnesses whose testimony corroborates what Dee and Lisa wrote. And the evidence is absolutely overwhelming here. And we weren't not quick to reach judgment. We analyzed it.
No.
We thought about it. We considered everything that we had been told. And, you know, I think it was a combination of two things that finally caused us to say, you know, we've got to stand up here, and we have to actually condemn this as abuse and not pretend that we're just separating because of his conspiracies. We have to call a spade here. It was a combination of this letter that you're reading. This is an extraordinarily powerful witness by someone who is the ultimate eyewitness here. You can't be in a more credible position. And then what they began to post on their UT site. I've viewed 50 pages of screenshots that have been sent to me. I've spent 2 whole days just writing down what they had presented in UT and on Facebook. And I shared a number with, in fact, many of you actually went there and saw them yourself. It is so reprehensible that by the time we saw him incriminate himself and say, yep, you're right, I'm guilty of all these things, and his devotees along with us, there was no other choice but to do what we're doing.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't want to do this. I think people need to know that we tried to protect Yalda and Lisa and even Larry, undeservedly so.
Undeservedly so. The gift we were giving, undeservedly giving Larry, was that it was our intent never to have to share any of this. But what he has done to Lisa with his posts, with his threats, he gave us no choice.
Yes.
And we told him that's the whole purpose of writing that letter that way, was to say, listen, we've got all the evidence. It's overwhelming. It's indicting. It's incriminating. It's irrefutable. And if you are not willing to just cease and desist from this, then we're going to have no other option than to reveal it. You would think that a sane individual would say, you know, let's just let bygones be bygones. Okay, I'll stop quoting your words, and we'll just separate ways. That was the hope. That was the reason that the letter was written that way. But no, he responded to say, you know, I am guilty of everything that I've been accused of, and 10 times worse. So go ahead, Dee.
I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I know we're getting close to time, I'm pretty sure. So I asked Lisa about all of Larry's accusations, the closet, the dresses, and the cash. An avalanche of connections, betrayal, abuse, lies, and manipulation poured out as we both began to open up and defy the code of silence. I am beyond sad that I lost what I perceived to be a friend. I loved Larry so very much. My children called him Uncle. He gave them presents. We enjoyed feasts together. We laughed often. And I will never forget him. But I refuse to be aligned with a man who would use the covenant as leverage over the weak, as a door to prey upon the vulnerable, to bully and attack by proxy all those who dared to disagree with him. When you told him, Craig, that you were disappointed in him, he felt that you had publicly shamed him. He won't openly attack you, at least not up to this letter when I wrote it last week.
He has now.
And after this show, he will.
Well, he has. The last week, he's been vicious in his attacks. Oh, yeah.
And this was before any information, like you said, even came out. He told on himself.
Of course.
But he's been planting little seeds of doubt about you in a wave of undercurrent ever since then. So he had began to hint at people in UT to send you emails to tell you how wrong you were so that he could be personally validated. He actually, I found out he gave your personal phone number out to some of these people, which he knew you would not appreciate and would make them look bad.
He was actually, that was a ploy. He, when he was really sick and he couldn't do the show because he had too much pain, he couldn't sit down. He begged me for my phone number so he could call me. I don't give out my phone number. I don't give out my phone number. First, because I don't want to devour my time. I can't. I have to have some time away from this. It would just eat me up alive in terms of devouring my time. And all I really have now is a cell phone, and it's just inappropriate. I did not want to be having these private conversations. And so I relented, and the conversation was just like 2 minutes long. He said nothing. And I was like, don't you miss me kind of thing. And then I saw that there's only one person that called me. It happened to be, I won't say her name. One person called me, and I texted them back and said, please, don't call me. I know where you got the number. Let's communicate by email. It's not appropriate.
And he did that to make her look bad.
Right. I'm a married man. It's not appropriate for me having conversations with other women, whether they're married or not. It is not appropriate. I am happy to talk about the subject that I love, which is the Torah, with you via email. Jackie, we've been corresponding now for, 10 years or more?
Close, about 8 to 9.
Yeah. And what is the context of 99% of our communications?
Edits to the book, to the different books, to the different chapters.
Edits the book, Have I ever called you? Yeah. Have I ever called you?
No.
Have I ever visited with you? Have I ever met you personally?
No.
We have a good relationship. Our relationship really is mostly business. You edit my books. I'm very grateful for you. You're extremely good at it, and we constantly are communicating on edits that you've seen and recommendations that you have. I think I've only made one personal request of you. I asked you if you wouldn't mind to look at my son's personal statements for law school and edit them for typos.
Correct.
I think that's the only one in almost 10 years.
It is absolutely the only one.
Yeah.
And I volunteered because when I first began to read Yada Yahweh, I was noticing typos. So it was me who contacted you to ask you if I could proofread and send suggested changes.
Yeah. Correct. And you've devoted so much time to it that I think you know the book as well as I know the book.
I love reading Torah.
Yeah. So that's the appropriate kind of relationship. Let's communicate by email, and let's limit our conversations to knowing and understanding and communicating Yahweh's words. That's all we do. Okay, go ahead, Dee. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I just want to talk briefly about another friend I have. He's in the Covenant group and was and may still be in UT, and he's had wonderful things to say about Larry. Larry actually trained him in his own line of work, and for valid reasons, this man needed to make, my friend needed to make more money than what Larry would pay. So according to my friend, he started his own business in the same field several states away. He smiled at me. He came to Florida not too long ago, and I had the opportunity to visit him. And he said, Larry's a great guy. He gave me his blessing, and we're good friends to this day. But Larry tells me that my friend is the reason Yada won't consider the covenant, because this man stole his business model and cost him thousands of dollars. I want to note very quickly that our walk to Yahweh is ours alone, and if anyone else, no one can be blamed for someone rejecting the covenant. It's a personal walk. Now, you can run people off, but I would venture to say that Yada won't consider the covenant because of Larry, and not at all because of someone else. I don't understand why
there are a lot of
want
people
in
who
the
won't
covenant.
consider the covenant because of Larry.
And the other people that sing his praises on UT. By the way, according to Heathrow, Heathrow's in London, Larry just posted on UT that I am a cult leader. Says Craig is a cult leader.
Yeah, he's been saying that for a few days now.
Well, you're a poor one for making money, I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you one thing, because...
I'm behind on my dues, by the way. I'll get that to you next week. Don't worry.
My tithe is in the mail. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, I'd like to...
If I had a dime for every time that accusation's been thrown out, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah. Maybe I have an agenda other than citing Yahweh's testimony and trying to understand it, but I'm not sure what that is. So if somebody could figure out what that is, then please tell me. And
Sounds like
if I'm going to be this, I really need to learn how to do a better job of it, because it doesn't have any of the perks that go along with the job of anybody else that I've ever heard that's done it. But,
Larry's very fond of saying that you're one of the most intelligent men on the planet. So it's interesting is that as soon as you disagree with him, now you're a dork and a cult leader. It just makes Larry look even more foolish for ever promoting you in the first place.
Yeah. By the way, I wrote a whole piece once on intelligence, just because he had a post, and I'm really smart, and I went through it. Said, intelligence it doesn't really have a lot of value when it comes to knowing Yahweh. If you want to translate his testimony and understand what he's about, intelligence falls about 10th on the list of things that has value. And we'll talk about that on a different time, not tonight, but on a future show. We'll talk about how intelligence, while it can have value, it comes in about 10th on the list of things that has merit or has real value when it comes to translating Yahweh's testimony and deriving insights from it, coming to understand it. So even if true, it's meaningless. Go ahead, Dave. We're pretty good at interrupting you at this point.
Oh, please, it's fine. I feel bad that Jackie won't get much time.
No, she's going to, because we will continue to record even when we stop broadcasting, and we'll get it in.
Dee, and this is what you've experienced personally. I am here for Lisa to share what she wrote.
Well, her voice of this is incredibly important, simply because this has been made about her, and it's been about her. She was the target, and if it wasn't for the family and Yahweh, I think, guiding all of this, she would have been destroyed, and that pains me greatly to know that.
And by the way, it's not about her. It's about him.
Right, but as far as he's
concerned,
he's sick. He's just sick.
He's sick. He is a sick man.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I went to visit my friend when he came to Florida, as I said, and Larry was livid about it and wouldn't talk to me for a few weeks. And then when he finally called me, he made his little cryptic comments like, I know you went to see him, and I couldn't understand why he was upset, so I asked him, are you upset? And he said, well, Dee, if you want to associate with people who F me over, and it goes back to what Dr. Vaknin was saying about controlling the environment.
And before you go into that, I just want to I know the person you're talking about here. I actually have known him very well. I've emailed with him many, many times. And he told me the exact same story. He told he told you, he worked for Larry for a period, wasn't able to make enough money. Larry showed him the business model and gave him his blessing to use it. And that's what he's using now.
By the way, it's not Larry's business model. He took it. He took it from another man, and we'll learn about that later.
Wow.
But I know the person you're talking about. He's a great guy, and
he is.
I have no reason to doubt anything he would say.
I don't either. He's been incredibly helpful with translating and looking up words and logos for me.
He's done he's been working on a lot of his own translations lately, and it's always great getting to read those.
Yes. So this, knowing him, just listening to the story objectively, if you look at the patterns of people, they'll tell you who they are. And one of them consistently manipulates and lies, values and devalues, and tries to control, while the other one is incredibly helpful and kind and minds his own business, and what can you say about a man like that? So I just couldn't believe Larry's story about him. It just didn't make sense. And I'm going to quote here from Dr. Vaknin. The narcissist's paranoid and schizoid tendencies, combined with his lack of introspective self-awareness and his stunted sense of humor, and the risks to the grudging members of his cult are clear. The narcissist sees enemies and conspiracies everywhere. He often casts himself as the heroic victim, the martyr of dark and stupendous forces. In every deviation from his tenets, he espies malevolent and ominous subversion. He therefore is bent on disempowering his devotees by any and all means. The narcissist is dangerous. I'm not a psychologist, but it's uncanny reading Dr. Vaknin's description of the narcissist cult leader and how apropos it is when compared to Larry. It's stunning.
It's just like Larry said, I'm the head of a cult. He's projecting.
Projection.
Again. Yeah, he's taking what he is himself guilty of and trying to project it on others. It's a classic tactic, and only an idiot would fall for it.
So then there's the women who came to Larry to learn about Yahowah that Larry used and discarded for, quote, not getting it fast enough. Larry claims they all came on to him. In fact, he claims there are several others waiting in the wings for his attention. After engaging in a sexual relationship, which was consensual, no one's accusing him of being a rapist or a sexual offender, nothing like that. After engaging in a consensual sexual relationship with the women, and by the way, he told me he did meet them at a hotel. So there's little jokes on Facebook about meeting women in hotels. And there's a little truth in every joke, after all. After engaging in this relationship with these women, he blocked them on Facebook and mocked them for being whores. I have scoured Facebook for two of them because he did tell me their names and actually sent me a link to one of their profiles, and I can't find it. I'm hoping to reach out to them and see if their interest in Yahowah could be salvaged. The stories he told about them are brutal, and I don't want to write them. My husband was disgusted as he listened. And if Larry wants, I can fully reveal the stories, if he insists. Narcissistic supply and sexuality are inversely related. In the cerebral narcissist mind, when narcissist supply is low, he resorts to rampant sex as he hunts for his next stable source of secondary supply, as he seeks to make up for lost time. When the flow of supply has been reconstituted, he reverts almost immediately to his sexual hibernation. To the cerebral narcissist, the sex act consists of low-grade narcissist supply, a mere stopgap measure, and a necessary evil in the capture and captivation of his future intimate partner. The somatic narcissist is the mirror image of his cerebral brother. To him, sex, sexual prowess, carnal exploits, and a string of conquests is his narcissistic supply. His sexuality, however nonconformist or even deviant, is the only stable fount of the narcissist supply he needs to regulate his sense of self-worth. He actually seeks out and selects partners who are, how do you say this word? Is it labile or labial?
Yeah.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah. That's all right.
Volatile, erratic, fleeting, adventurous, and unstable as he switches between multiple sexual objects of infatuation. The somatic flaunts his sexuality and thus knowingly gives up on a stable, long-lasting relationship. And I would like to note that although Larry is at this time nearly crippled, he has not always been. He has been claiming to know Yahowah for, I think, close to 15 years or 10 years.
Yeah, it can't be probably more than about 10 years, but okay.
Okay.
I don't think he does, by the way. I think the whole thing's a charade.
Right.
I hope it's a charade. I hope it's a charade. Because if it's not a charade, boy, do I owe God an apology.
Well, there is,
all the
evidence
is that it's a charade, so let's hope it stays that way.
I think that Yalda is a victim in his game. I'm assuming she's codependent, but again, I'm no psychologist. There are instances all over the Covenant family of Larry offering money. The gist of the transaction is as follows. You own property. Larry pays to put structures or build a community on your property. You then work to maintain the structures and pay Larry 70% of all profits indefinitely. If you fail to pull through, Larry withdraws his friendship temporarily to create a feeling of loss. My friend that works for him got out of the indefinite dependency, and Larry despises him for it. Larry offered my husband $8,000 in cash on my front porch to go into business flipping cars. I declined, and I will add that Larry knew I was uncomfortable with it and went behind my back to my husband. He tried to get us to let him put mushroom grow houses on our 7 acres. We also declined. He expressed his disappointment and didn't speak to us for several months following that. He came back around after he'd withdrawn long enough to discourage disappointing him in the future. There are several others I know of that he propositioned. Honestly, it puts people ill at ease who are trying to come together to learn the Torah, not be exploited. We also care and don't want to disappoint, quote, family. During my last phone call with him, Larry accused Lisa of setting up the financial support of a woman in South Africa. He tells me that Lisa set up that scheme, but never contributes a dime, placing the burden of Renee's care on the rest of us, and now we're stuck helping her forever. I don't mind, Dee. I just want you to know that Lisa can spend everyone else's money, no problems, and I'm warning you as a friend, never help the crazy bitch. Larry's financial contributions are simply another way to garner narcissistic supply in the form of commendation for his altruistic endeavors. In actuality, he is buying supply under the guise of the covenant. This explains, in my opinion, his deep resentment of the situation. He views Renee's situation as little better than that of an arrangement with a prostitute. He pays, by default, he supplies a service by getting the attention that he gets for it, because he gloats and brags about doing it all the time. He views his followers in UT similarly. He supplies the cash, a.k.a. Yahweh's message, and the, quote, stupid whores deliver him narcissistic supply in return in the forms of compliments, dependency on him to continue to provide, and even sexual/financial supply if the victims wish to whore themselves out to him to that degree. All the while, he remains as disarming as ever, even poorly feigning humility. It's also his business model and his work. I want to point out that in hindsight, I allowed my appreciation of Larry for sending me Yada Yah to cloud my judgment. He took full advantage of any and all gratitude from not just myself but others, using it as leverage to foster loyalty. I take responsibility for that. If anything, this experience has taught me to stop leaning on men to guide me and to fully rely on Noah as my teacher. I also recognize that I was the target of narcissistic supply for a reason. I fed the monster by giving it my attention. This is why completely severing contact is the only way to stop playing the game. Negative attention is still supply. Larry comes in.
That is why after this program we'll never talk about him again, ever.
Yes.
By the way, Kendra, Christie just sent a message in through JB. He says, I used to work for Larry and Yada. I can confirm some of what is being said from both Yada and Larry. Yeah.
That's very sad. I'm sorry he's had that experience.
Yeah.
This is exploitation of the family. It's an angle that I did not see coming. Someone that's coming with so much truth and sharing it so openly and so freely. It's very disarming. And then he does these very subtle twists. Well, the Torah justifies this, so I can abuse people because Yahweh doesn't know them. He doesn't see them. And if you make him mad and if you, quote, F him over, well, you're just not covenant, so then he can continue to abuse you. I've seen lots of
I got to say, that is actually a very Islamic view. You know, it's the old saying, a deal is a deal is a deal, but only between Muslims.
Right. Exactly.
Yahweh has no such view in those terms.
No, he doesn't.
Right.
You know, he said, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Abuse the Gentile. He says, don't follow in the ways of the Gentile. He never says, abuse the Gentile. Ever.
Right. There's an example. I have a disagreement with the man we were talking about earlier, Frank. But while I disagree with his tactics, I don't claim that he's not covenant. In fact, I think he is. And I would never presume to judge that. I've simply cut communication because I'm uncomfortable at this point engaging with him further based on actions that I've seen. And I have the right to do that.
I think he was gaslighted. I mean, I'm not going to absolve anyone from responsibility, but I think he was gaslighted.
I think so.
Manipulated.
And it's a really dangerous ground to be the judge and jury of another person in that way. So I lost my face. Larry comes in the guise of truth, which is what makes his manipulation and use of Yahweh's message so criminal in my eyes. There is nothing as deadly as a lie hidden in the truth, and I unwaveringly consider Larry a lying, manipulating, devious, unrepentant con artist. I trusted Larry's word. There was a great deal of vouching on behalf of his integrity, as well as what I perceived to be Yahweh's support. I saw no reason for him to lie. Indeed, there really is none other than the need to control others to secure a constant supply of attention. I was used, as were you, Craig, as with Lisa, and nothing more. Once you stop allowing yourself to be used, you stop hitting the ball back into his court, and the game ends. There was one particular characteristic that I did notice early on but failed to fully connect. Larry has a disarming tactic called grooming, consisting of intense complimenting. I also think he uses promoting someone to admin in his group as a form of grooming. It breeds a sense of loyalty. He makes you feel important and special. So I do think that's another form of his grooming, which I've also seen recently with Shannon. He made her admin like yesterday or the day before, which I just found incredibly ironic based on all the stuff he's had to say about her before. So, you know, one of the reasons that I didn't come on the show before was because I had done a study, and Larry would rave about it being brilliant, and I don't really know about that, but it was interesting, and it was discussion about how the unclean animals can be traced back to represent a religion that started a long time ago. And something that is interesting is it had to be exist then and exist now. It has to be something that is always available to be eaten. So it's a really interesting study, and he wanted me to come on to the show and tell you about it. But I began to notice that he started dropping my name on the show, bragging around Facebook about, quote, my knowledge and how smart I was. And I find this very distasteful. It's not what I'm here for. I'm here to study with family and get feedback. And I don't ever want it to be said that I came on the show so that I could flaunt myself. And I certainly didn't want to be flaunted by Larry.
We'll have you on, by the way, to talk about the animals, because it is a very interesting study. We've done a number of studies on it in the past, and it's really the whole thing is enlightening. So we'll do it one day.
It is enlightening. So when I refused to come, Larry got annoyed with me and didn't speak to me for another few months. So there was a lot of gaps in between our communication where I'd irritate him and then he'd be fine with me. I'm not going to stand here and pretend for a moment that I was not caught up in this. I publicly supported Larry. I have done the only thing that Yahweh asks of his people when faced with the truth. I have turned around and changed my thinking to continue to follow Yahweh over any man. My one regret is that I didn't see it sooner. I feel deeply burdened for the people who were run off from the covenant for contradicting Larry. I furthered his ability to abuse by supporting him and arguing on his behalf, and I am disgusted. And like I said earlier, I do apologize to those that I treated unnecessarily harsh. I am concerned for his following. Many of them are siding with him, thinking that Lisa and I disconnected with him over conspiracies, which I think that we've cleared that point already. I'm reminded of Yosha's appeal, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I was torn at the time of this letter between a desire to warn the covenant family and a desire to protect the sheep. It's interesting that the few people I tried to warn turned against us, Lisa and I, even more. Shannon was one that we reached out to and tried to warn, and she chose.
Boy, she become vicious.
Yes.
Wow.
We actually tried to help her because we know how Larry really feels about her. He hates him.
Ouch. Yeah, ouch.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And now he's using her for more credibility, and it's really sad for her because she's been doubly used and played by Larry, and it's very hurtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What she has written gives me the creeps.
Yes, it's rough.
No, you've read it.
Yep. I am publicly and privately severing and removing my support of Larry Hendricks in its entirety for all of time. If Yahweh chooses to fix it after time, then that's his business, and I won't remember any of this nastiness anyway. So,
let's hope it doesn't happen.
I view Larry as irreconcilable. I view him as dangerous to the family. I wrote that I view him as little better than Shaul. He is an abuser and hater of women, a usurper of the Torah, and an ungrateful man, gnashing his teeth, and a ravenous wolf in sheep's clothing. And I'm going to quote Mizmor 50, verse 1. To the wicked, God says, why do you recount my engraved prescriptions for living and lift up my covenant upon your mouth?
Dee, thank you. I know your husband has been listening. That during this entire time, I want to thank him. I apologize to him that you had to endure this, but I'm impressed with him that he has stood with you and stood up for you and supported you through this. That says a great deal about him. I'm impressed, and I want to thank him for being there with you tonight and being on the phone listening to everything you had to say. This has been an enormous burden on you from a time point of view, and what you've done is invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Jackie.
Thank you, Dee.
Jackie, we're going to go into the unbroadcast period of time here, but it'll all be recorded, and we want to get this all out tonight. So here now is the first of the two letters that we received from someone very close to Larry. Her story is even harder to read because she has been hurt the worst. She is the target of unrelenting and malicious, slanderous attacks. Her letter is also long, but since Larry is continuing to escalate his attacks on her, Lisa's witness also needs to be told. She is being ruthlessly pummeled for having done the right thing, for having the courage to stand up and to stop the abuse. I came to know Lisa through emails and her occasional participation in the show. I've never met her in person, never seen a picture of her, never talked with her on the phone. Over the past several months, Lisa has been sending me and others examples of her research. It is always fascinating, to which I commented on it, shared it with others, and we have continued to correspond on those topics via email. Lisa's letter is ordered by topic: business, worldviews, group dynamics, animals, his wife, mother and family, injury, her accountability, UT, sexuality, the Torah, politics. As with Dee's letter, Lisa sought to understand the beast that had abused her. So she did what she does best, which is research. Most of it is psychological profiling, which Jackie is going to read her letter, and we're going to admit from the for the most part, from the letter. While it all makes sense, we have limited training in this regard. That said, I have read this letter. I've had two people actually read this letter who I respect, and their conclusions are that Lisa's analysis and research and depictions are accurate. The term they use to describe the beast that we're witnessing is narcissistic sociopath. It was their conclusion that even the most highly trained psychologist could not help Larry, and we should not try. Complete avoidance is the only sane option. So this is her story in her words. As in the case with Dee, I believe her. Her letter is being read by one of the 8 people originally selected to evaluate these claims against Larry and UT. Jackie and I have never met. We've never spoken on the phone, and I know that she is married. She has children. We've exchanged countless emails over the past 10 years. 95% have been focused on her edits of my books. She is the best and most devoted editor in our family. I've only asked one favor from her, and I've shared that with you previously. Now, by the way, she has never asked a favor of me. Jackie, would you please share Lisa's letter?
Yes, I will. Lisa begins her letter, and she's itemized it as Craig mentioned earlier. So I'll begin with her first item. It's called business. Larry lies about the level of his business ability. He is quite dysfunctional without Yada and was bleeding out money on returns and mistakes. Larry has treated his clients with utter disdain, with mocking and ridicule, racial slurs, bullying, and more. Larry aims to get the most from each sale while tricking the customer into thinking they are getting the great deal. Profits are necessary in any business, but this was something entirely different. The level of elation on making a few hundred extra dollars was sadistic when he described how stupid and inept his customers all were. I have never seen a person so hateful of their own source of livelihood while projecting how hard he works and valuable he is to it. From what I've seen, Larry is little more than a telemarketer of second-hand engines. He was trained by a Jewish man whom he has told me effed him over for money, then closed the doors of the company. Larry, of course, claims that he was the top salesman and made the company what it was. In reality, he took the business model and went on his own after the original owner had failed due to interpersonal issues with Larry. In essence, it was a form of plagiarism of the business model. The motivation behind the new endeavor was jealous thinking. Larry is better and can do it better than the owner of the company who created the model. Continuing, it took a lot of investigating to find the truth behind all of the lies he told me and others. He has 3 other men working for him, whom he runs through a cycle of overvaluation and devaluation. Lisa's second item is worldviews. Larry thinks the weak, sick, and infirm are inferior. He disdains Chinese, blacks, gays, and anyone who is not a type A personality. Larry functions in a world where he thinks others are less valuable than him. He portrays an altruistic self to disarm others into thinking that he is helpful and caring, which is a false persona. He has no emotional depth other than as a manipulative tactic to garner an audience, accolades, and control over others. He gaslights and brainwashes people to think the way he does, and when they don't readily comply, this results in one of 2 actions. 1, childlike sulking, or 2, anger, frustration, and rage, followed by smear campaigns, bullying, and outright lying about the context of the situation or the role played by Larry in comparison to others. The whole of UT, Unpopular Truth, is affected by it, and it has become a part of their group dynamics. The people in UT fall generally into these categories. 1, those who see something but can't put their finger on it. 2, other narcissists. 3, those who have codependent natures from former abusive relationships who have not healed from those traumas. Or 4, rather quiet people with whom he consistently hides his online or on-air persona from, so they simply don't know him. The third item that Lisa mentioned is group dynamics. By using secrecy or loyalty, one member is played off against another in ways that leave the participants scratching their heads in dismay. Psychological and emotional abuse is doled out by the elder in the group in ways which are manipulative, backstabbing, vicious, and controlling, all the while being presented as beneficial for the victim. Most of the posts he makes are plagiarism, using what you have written in your books or said on the Shabbat Torah study show. They are sometimes mixed with what others have told him on the phone. Even with his conspiracies, the research is not his own. When attempting an original post, your translations are combined with a mixture of what you have written and his own commentary, but his comments seldom make sense. They are confusing and incongruent at best, bearing little relationship to the cited passages from your books. He finds calling people religious boobs intensely satisfying. In this regard, there is a difference between the followers in UT and its self-proclaimed leader. The followers have been manipulated or beguiled into accepting that this is how Yahweh's people deal with the outside world and with each other. It is highly neurotic and creates a sense of impending doom. It also creates chaos and confusion. It is not how Yahweh explains family dynamics in his Torah. I'm taking a breath. The fourth item is in animals. Sometimes the way people treat animals reveals their character. I have seen him vacillate between loving his cat and inappropriate negligent behavior. Yeah, behavior before delightful. I'm going to start.
Neglectful.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Let me start this sentence again. I think him vacillate between loving. Okay, an inappropriate, neglectful behavior towards his pet. When I travel.
By the way, I happen to agree with her in this case. You can tell a lot about a person's character by how they treat animals.
Oh yeah.
So I think this is, some might be saying that they're listening to the archives here. No, that's not, why are they getting that kind of, no, she's insightful here. She is absolutely right. Go ahead, Jackie.
Well, thank you. When I traveled to help Larry, based on what I know now was a lie, his cat was matted, with feces stuck to its tail, preventing urinary flow. The smell was atrocious. So I washed the cat and cleaned its box. But since that wasn't enough, I told Larry that I needed to have its fur trimmed to resolve the problem. In spite of this, Larry complained when I found a local groomer because he claimed the rates were unreasonable. His anger about it was unregulated and extreme. He yelled at me for asking him to pay for such a useless service that any monkey could do. I felt so bad for the cat that I took it to be groomed anyway. When I brought the cat back after all daycare, because it really was that bad, all Larry could say was that it was ugly and was disgusting without hair. It was then that I began to realize he had serious issues, so I told him that his reaction was malicious. He sulked for a while, but then could not hide his desire for childish revenge. The mask was falling off and revealing Larry's true nature. He realized then that I was withdrawing. As a result, he began a smear campaign against me behind my back. He claimed that I was high maintenance and was all too willing to spend other people's money.
He had to take care of his cat.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Oh my God, this guy is
do what you should be doing yourself.
Oh goodness.
There's no reasoning for this. Attacking others is one of the many ways he controls his group. It is right out of the narcissist handbook. He's predictable now that I see him for what he is. Lisa goes on to speak. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's so obvious now. It's kind of like with Paul. Once you figure him out, it's just obvious. Well, we've now figured Larry out. It's obvious.
Absolutely.
His wife is the next subject. Yeah, his wife's the next subject. Again, we were not going to bring Yada into this. We were going to leave her completely out, except Larry pummels his Facebook accounts with Yada providing this witness. Yada hated her. Yada said this. Yada said that, and everything else. So we need to tell the truth about their relationship.
Do you want me to read what Lisa has to say about Larry's wife, Yada?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I've got this first sentence, this first paragraph I've got to put together because I restructured it a little bit. From what I can tell, Yada was once a very altruistic person. We were together a long time before she felt comfortable telling me anything. And when she first opened up, she vacillated between aggrandizing Larry and telling the truth about him. She also told me that her mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that has been challenging for her. Yada then admitted to me that she went to an abuse center for women. She called it Horizon House. Having listened to Larry say such mean things about her, telling me that she abused him, I was naturally predisposed to disbelieve her claims. So I checked online to see if I could find Horizon House. There was no such facility in Jacksonville. Only later I realized that it was actually called Safe Horizon, which may indeed be referred to as the Horizon House for those who spend time there. It is a facility for women who have been abused. So it was now obvious that Larry's claims were all a lie. She wasn't abusing him, he was abusing her. Sadly, I only figured this out after my departure. Larry tells his confidence that Yada is...
By the way, you don't go to a home for abused women and move into a home for abused women. If you haven't been abused. That is correct.
And if you haven't been abused.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. So we have, this is proof that he is abusing her.
Mm-hmm.
She's a victim.
Sad. Larry tells his confidence that Yada is a habitual liar, except when he coerces her into lying on his behalf. It's highly disgusting to me looking back on it. Toward the end of my stay, Larry told me a horrific story, one that filled me with dread for Yalda. Larry sadistically and audaciously told me that he had seduced her little sister. As a narcissist, Larry has porous borders, especially with family members. He sees no issue with having sexual relationships with his wife's sister. He knows it is explicitly denounced in the Torah and that incest is immoral. But he has zero empathy. He is proud of it, and he flaunts it to others, and he brags about it while professing to know Yahowah and Torah. Yalda drinks a bottle of wine almost every night to fall asleep. All the while, she puts on a show that is disarmingly saccharine sweet. Though abused, Yalda will defend him at all costs. This is the folie à deux.
The duo folie. It means that multiple people are participating in the same deception. It's what, by the way, it's what the French call conspiracy theory.
Yep.
Multiple people sharing the same deception. Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. Larry has turned her whole family into L-bots for his bidding, and she seems to accept this to gain some level of sanity. For example, she knows Larry slept with her little sister and yet finds nothing wrong with it. Larry projects his feelings onto Yalda and then slanders her. He devalues her and then publicly aggrandizes her and builds her up again only to tear her down. He clearly lacks any kind of real intimacy with other human beings. It would seem now that Larry wanted to groom me and others to fill her place in this nightmare world. When I and then others wouldn't comply, he made sure that we would pay for our unwillingness to submit to his will. I was the unwitting target until someone else saw right through it. Larry has slandered, gaslighted, used proxies, and lied egregiously while targeting me as someone to discard. But by turning on me, by slandering me, Dee in particular began to see what was really happening. The code of silence was finally about to be broken.
Jackie, I want to interrupt him. I want to interrupt him because I was not aware of what the term gaslighted meant. So and it's used throughout her letter. It is a very specific term. You can look it up online. It means to manipulate somebody through psychological means into questioning their own sanity. Building somebody up, tearing them down, for example. That's manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. Go ahead.
Okay. Only when we communicated openly as sisters did everything fall into place. What we, as a very small group, comprised mostly of women, were learning was heartbreaking for all those whom Larry had spoken ill of, including Kurt, who he disdains intensely. Think of it in these terms. A man kicks a dog in his bedroom. The dog runs away into the kitchen. When the man walks in, the dog bites the offending foot in front of others. Then the man says, see, the dog has the problem. The sixth item Lisa addresses is mother and family. Larry claims that he was abused by both parents before he was 8. According to him, his mother gave attention to and loved her 2 gay sons, but not Larry. In reality, his family shuns him and only visits for very short durations. His behavior has become offensive to them. One of his daughters treats him indifferently. He brags about them on air while belittling them at all other occasions. He uses his children as props in his story, claiming their accomplishments as his own, and they despise him for it. His concocted story of his divorce and reasons why it happened is absurd. As usual, he paints himself as the victim. he speaks of his former wife in a highly appalling manner. The claims regarding his mother provided some of the first cracks in his mask. He actually has rage toward her that approaches sadistic pleasure, especially when speaking about how much he would like to wrap his hands around her neck and end her life. Larry told me that he had, in fact, threatened her life as a teenager. And then he brags about, yes?
I'm just listening.
I'm sorry. No, just.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
just.
and then,
I've read this letter 3 times. I still hear it, and I'm flabbergasted.
the appalling read.
Yeah, that's hard.
And so I can imagine Lisa having experienced it and sitting down and writing it out.
I remember when I read it, I sent it to, because she listed the people that she felt comfortable evaluating. She wanted people to say, "This is my story. Why don't you read this? See if it's corroborated by anything else you've ever read." And I remember reading, and the first thing I told you, Jackie, is I never want to read this letter again. I've just finished reading. I'm going to send it to you. I said I never want to read this letter again, because Larry was so abusive to Lisa on. In his public platform, and so slanderous of her, that we were given no choice but to read it.
That's true. And he brought it on himself. He was warned. And then he brags about his time in the military, regaling his physical altercations with others. I thought he was just kidding, but it's no joke. I have only one other time seen the rage displayed in his eyes as he told these stories. You never mistake it, not ever. Larry is damaged beyond correction. He enjoys the pain of others because it regulates his shallow emotions. Lisa's 7th item is titled Injury. Larry uses his injury, which was self-inflicted from overeating and a sedentary lifestyle, to methodically construct his domain. Yada waits on him as if a slave, and he expects others to do so as well. I say self-inflicted because 7 years ago, a normal person would have seen a doctor. But Larry views doctors as if they know nothing, and he hates them and anyone else he perceives to be more important than he is, with a few exceptions, such as yourself. So he spends thousands on home cures that never work, thinking he knows better than doctors. In effect, Larry has ruined his own health.
So doctors are just another conspiracy theory to him.
Yeah, that's right. They are. Yeah, they are another conspiracy theory. Correct.
It took a great effort
to... by the way. We all are to him now. We're all part of a conspiracy theory. In fact, one of his devotees has said that this whole attack on Larry is a conspiracy against him.
Because we have so much to gain from defaming Larry.
Yeah, we do. All we want Larry is to go away, to shut up, to never quote Yahweh's name, to never speak of the covenant, to never cite my books, ever again. Just go away. And never, never speak of Lisa or Dee again. Just go away.
This has really just been embarrassing. I don't see what any of us have to gain from doing this.
No.
I think we would have been much better we would have had a much better time discussing Yahweh's word tonight.
You betcha.
Definitely.
We would have gained a lot more personally by doing that.
Character counts. And I'm going to disagree on that thing, on that one point. Character counts. When we come together and rally together as a family to protect someone that we care about, then we're doing something extraordinarily important. What we're doing is important. We're standing behind, our arms wrapped around family members who have been abused. And we're holding this individual accountable so that those who have been abused can heal. And so that the abuse stops.
Here.
Continuing on, it took a great effort to, we're talking about the doctor now. It took a great effort to show Larry his own diagnosis of sciatica was incorrect and not reality. None of his family could convince him to make an appointment with the doctor, but after our discussion, he agreed to see one. Even after the doctor visit, he still had hopes and delusions of healing himself in some magical way and asked me to research it. The doctor said the only option was surgery, but he insisted that he knew better. I had to keep showing him the x-rays to prove he was in denial. It only flustered his fragile ego. The primary reason for his effort to get out of his chair is to hurt others. This I have learned. He wants to be the military Larry again and beat up the Atifa, a leftist, anti-fascist group, and others who annoy him. He laughs about it, but hidden inside the laughter is something very dark. Others have seen it too. Only those who have met him in person can see the alter self. It may sound callous to say, but I was basically used as a human cane to get him from one place to another. Once away from him, I began to process what I had observed and felt at the time. As I thought about it, I tried to brush his inappropriate behavior off as just a strong personality, but that was not true. He is so pathological and insane, he caused me and others to question our own insanity. Now that I see him for what he really is, I recognize that his game is actually crude and easy to spot. Unfortunately, prior to this realization, his game caused me to suffer deep-seated anxiety and immeasurable stress. The eighth item, Lisa titled as My Accountability. I also made excuses for myself. I thought Yahowah would never allow such a psychotic man to share his Torah. It was a delusional coping mechanism on my behalf. To admit or come forward put my connection to the UT group in danger. I knew that I would be shunned and victimized by smear tactics. So I allowed myself to ignore the situation. After all, he seemed credible, rational, likable, and stable on air and online much of the time. I irrationally thought I stood to lose everything. It was the ultimate gaslight technique. Larry has turned far more people away from Torah than to it, and yet he has made us all believe the opposite is true. Those who came to know Torah were looking very hard for it and put up with abuse to obtain the truth they fought diligently to learn. Larry targets mostly women in volatile situations. He also targets men he does not like. I could list off names of everyone using these tactics in the group, and there are some of them, even you, would have a hard time believing. They are like Larry, both clever and stealthy. While UT attracts those wanting to learn, it also attracts others who enjoy demeaning and abusing people because such is encouraged in UT. Lisa's ninth item is sexuality. Larry has no personal borders and works around the borders of others. He'll ask for a massage or use some other scheme. I did not fall for them, but I am certain others did because of the many female victims. There is one Aussie woman of whom he spoke who came to live with him for 6 months while he pushed his wife out the door. He told me she was an ex-stripper with child and was much younger than Yada and, of course, Larry. He said that she was looking to understand the Torah. Sadly, she found something entirely different. When he was through with her, Larry, of course, slandered her. I needed and wanted an explanation why he was bragging about doing such awful things before I stepped forward. I knew that I risked being perceived as a liar by many. I also knew that he would say or do anything to make his behavior appear credible. So I needed evidence because I know how much you, amongst others, once cared for Larry. There was no possibility of stepping forward without proof, knowing how anything I said would be twisted and used against me. Larry was not careful when sharing his objectification and sadistic accounts of improper sexual behavior, but he was careful never to do this in writing. In verbal accounts, any revelation of his self-proclaimed exploits would be a he said, she said situation. So I knew I needed more women to step forward in order to be a credible witness, especially considering the misplaced love the UT group had for this liar. The truth is that in his condition with failing hips and deteriorating health, impotence is quite possible given his age, poor lifestyle, and self-neglect. So Larry resorts to tales of former glory and clings to them. Nonetheless, while visiting, I always locked my door at night and during all other times as well. The 10th item is not Torah observant. There is no possibility of Larry actually being guided by the Torah. I know this because he has never grown from simply parroting your words. There is no love for Yahowah in that. He is an actor and his own muse. The day before I left to go back to the island, he called me into his marital bedroom. I politely said no several times. Both Yalda and Larry insisted, and I relented. I said, "What's up?" He said, "Yalda has something to show you." She took out a book by Rumi, a self-proclaimed messiah and poet who pretended to be divine. She then began to sing my quote, unquote, prophecy in Persian. I was flabbergasted. No one who is Torah observant would allow such a thing to be done in their home. And there are also many religious artifacts in their home, including Yalda's Islamic prayer beads. I left as soon as I could get out of there. I felt like it was all a dream. I felt deeply hurt by the experience. Enticing a daughter of Yisrael to listen to citations from a book written by a religious madman and not knowing it's wrong set me off. I became very angry and highly suspicious of everyone that I thought I knew. I began to think everything about UT was a lie. It was like a house of leprosy to me. That's hard to read.
Oh,
Lisa?
God, it's hard to hear.
Yeah, very.
You know, the hardest part of the whole thing is that I was an accomplice, an unwitting accomplice. I mean, I should have known better. I mean, the evidence was all over the place, and I just denied it. But a large part of the reason that she allowed herself to be manipulated there, that she stayed there so long, that she was so reluctant to testify against him, was that I had praised him. I mean, I am so deeply hurt, saddened by that. I am so very sorry.
You had no degree. You had no knowledge.
Oh, the clues were everywhere. I mean, I received more letters on this than everything else combined. I have no excuse. I mean, I feel horrible. I was wrong. I'm so sorry.
So I will say, Craig, that Larry comes from that angle where if you're a covenant, you're going to experience attacks. It's very disarming. You know, he's quick to remind us all that we're going to be persecuted. So don't beat yourself up.
I mean, I must have corrected him about his language, about his terminology, about his abusive nature 500 times in the various times he appeared on the shows. I did so in writing to him. I did so when he was part of the shows. But oh man.
Fred just said in the chat room, hindsight's 20/20, and we all have our blind spots.
Yeah.
And we all have. There were none of us that didn't have inklings. We just didn't have a clue that it was this. That it was to this degree. The abuse.
Correct. That's true.
As Lisa
To
goes
really
on
get
11,
close to him to see it.
I feel awful.
yeah, of course, we all do.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Lisa's 11th item is politics. Larry thinks of himself as a political analyst, one wiser than all of those on TV. He watches Fox News incessantly. He loves Trump with blind adoration. Larry is very political.
Guess why he loves Trump?
He's
Trump's the closest
self-absorbed
thing
too.
to a narcissist we may have ever had as a president.
Yes, exactly.
I was thinking that earlier when Dee was talking about the way he would brag about, his conquest. It was very much Trump's locker room talk.
Oh yeah, talking women, treating women as objects. Exactly.
Well, and listen to Trump.
Loyalty oaths, secret meetings, loyalty oaths, all of the same thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about Trump. Let's continue with the letter. But I want to tell you that's the reason why they're cut out of the same cloth. Although Trump is a vastly more successful, far less affected version of Larry.
And Lisa continues. Larry is very political in his private life around non-covenant people and some covenant members. He switches it on and off when he needs to, vacillating between truth and lies. It must be exhausting. The last item is Lisa's conclusion, and she begins. It took little time to settle into a position of silence and dismay. Larry has no interest in observing the Torah, only in using it for his benefit. I realized that I had to find a way out, hopefully without becoming a target of his rage. I was resigned to learn alone without friends. But that was unnecessary because many have followed me into another group created by those who want to study the Torah and live it. Most of the new group have some inkling, but not the full details of the politics of UT. My being on social media was a huge mistake. It made me an easy target. I take responsibility for not coming forward earlier due to my own inner cowardice and inability to put the pieces together. But UT has been functioning for over 5 years and not one person has stepped up to expose it for what it is, a mind control group that hides behind Yahweh's words. Roy is correct in his assessment, not just about feeling something is off with Larry, but in the realization that someone with a dysfunctional neshama doesn't have the ability to know right from wrong. It's all fuzzy in Larry's mind. Because he simply parrots your words, passing them off as his own, they do not resonate. It boils down to a dysfunctional neshama. He loves to push buttons and find weaknesses in others. Hurting others gives him pleasure. Based upon my witness and that of others, Larry was remotely diagnosed by an experienced therapist. He was called a pathological, covert, malignant narcissist, possibly with a comorbid, sadistic with tendencies and incapable of love or empathy. We were told that he is an addict craving devotion. I am so. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just went wow.
Yeah, it is a wow, isn't it, Kirk? I am so sorry to have to be the one to bring attention to this. It seems that I tend to flesh out these people in the group. There are 3 others in UT that I recognized as vital before I knew who was the head of the snake and who was the worst of them all. Mashal 13 is my lamp through the darkness and my strength. Since I am being dishonored and being slandered by an insane person, it has been worth it to come forward, even if only one person's eyes are open to the nefarious truth, the unpopular truth, so my situation may be avoided by another. This is what I have witnessed, and at a great personal cost. I was duped by Larry. To admit I was gullible and my good nature and personable openness was used in such ways is shameful to me. I was lied to, gaslighted, and put on the edge by further lies told about me by Larry. I have hesitated coming forth and did not feel it's safe to do so. Everyone seemed to love Larry, but few actually knew the real Larry, only his carefully crafted persona. It is our very devotion that narcissists prey upon. Now that really is an unpopular truth, even for myself. I have been traumatized by this whole situation, especially believing that no one would trust what I had to say. I was already being tainted as unstable and picked apart like a vultured corpse as a discard. I sob as I write this. Many will be deeply hurt by this revelation, and I don't expect anyone who has no knowledge of the malady that torments Larry to understand any of it, because I didn't. This is by far the most painful letter I have ever had the displeasure of writing to anyone. I now have a zero contact policy with Larry. It is the only way to stop feeding his ego. I can't tell anyone what they should or should not do in this situation, but I would strongly recommend getting out, getting away, and doing so quietly. A recent show must have enraged him, even though he may pretend that he is in accord with your standards relative to his conspiracies. But it is all a ruse. My friendship with Larry was a ruse. As a result, I have symptoms of PTSD because of my errant choices. I made a grievous mistake. All you have to do to confirm what I've written is to listen to archives of Larry with an understanding of the psychological disorder from which he suffers. After reading books on narcissists, it didn't take long to figure it out, but don't take my word for it. Look into it yourself. It's obvious, and it has been there all along. I am asking for a little privacy and space while I heal. You may use the information for your own edification and understanding and share with Roy or Jackie, but I'm still reeling and will let Yahweh handle Larry and heal me. I trusted someone who is untrustworthy. I will never cower to a man like Larry again. I will become a freaking expert, if I must, to be certain I am able to spot them from a distance. They are very broken people and unable to change. It is estimated that 3% or more of the population have a narcissistic disorder, and those numbers are rapidly increasing. They do not seek treatment, nor do they care to, because in their minds they are not broken. We are. They are not fixable. They are insatiable. We should all become familiar with these people in order to avoid them, as they can't be reached. We are truly in the times of Noah. As he mentioned earlier, there is a Dr. Sam Vaknin who wrote the book Narcissistic Personality Disorder, The Facts. Read it to seek knowledge and understanding. Sam should know, as he is an expert, because he is one of them. His awareness is rare and highly uncommon. NPDs do not think, in fact, they know that their behavior is wrong. Instead, they think we are wrong. In their minds, they are the more evolved species. They believe those who love are weak, and such weakness is to be exploited to their advantage, which is a very ugly way of thinking. But this is the mindset of the malignant, covert narcissist. Study them because the numbers of these people are rising. This is a researchable fact and not paranoia. You can research how to trap a narcissist, and when you know the symptoms, you can determine within seconds on which operating system they are functioning. A typical narcissist, Larry, is magnanimous and charming, but the facade drops when he is insulted. He is much more careful how he relates to you than others. I don't suggest doing it, but it's your option. The campaign has begun. He is using secondary and tertiary sources to garner information and is publicly attacking me on YouTube. Everything he will say from now on will be wicked and twisted, a lie and a perversion, to make him seem like the victim. But if your eyes are open, you will see that he is making himself out to look like a man who is highly irrational right now. Larry will become enraged, and the love for Larry in the group will keep the facade alive. It is misplaced admiration by those with good and bad intentions. It will be used and is being used against them as we speak. It is very disheartening to watch this happen to the flock. There, the dead corpse is out in the daylight for all to see. I have done my work and I'm very tired. It took everything in me to write this openly and as objectively and honestly as I could. I researched and found the information I sought and learned the hidden truth behind the lie. It has taken a lot of my time and resources. These are my findings, and this is the answer to the group's problem. It is complex, but it is done. All that matters now is how do we handle a mentally ill man. The experts say no contact, but they do not know Yahweh. I don't know what to do in this situation, so I'll put it in Yah's hands. Lisa.
I think that's enough said. My heart's broken.
It was even harder to listen to this time than it was to read the first time.
Yeah, it is. I think enough said. Let's conclude our program. We will never mention him again. We will never speak of his group. They can go on and tell each other how wonderful they are and how rotten the rest of the world is as they curse and swear and promote the most idiotic of their conspiracies. I would only ask them to respect the request that I've made, which is that don't use Yahweh's name or my translations of his word or even the terminology that I have gleaned from him in any of their posts, in any of their public personas, in any of their outreach to anyone. It is inappropriate. It is a direct violation of the third statement that Yahweh etched in stone. It is unforgivable. Jackie, thank you. Dee, thank you. Kirk, JB, we've been through a lot these past few weeks as we've tried to bring this to a head. And it's done. And we're going to stand with and behind our family.
Yes, we are.
And there are times when you have to stand up and oppose evil. And we've done what we think is the right thing. And it is with a very heavy heart that I say good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. We have the Shabbat tomorrow, fortunately, to rest.
We need to rest.
Yeah, I want to have one bit of advice. I'm going to say this is what I would like, and you can all make your own decision. I don't want any more information from his site. I don't want to see any more screenshots. I will never go there. I don't want any updates. The only thing that I want is if somebody is being directly harmed, I want to be able to support them. But as for this man, I never want to see anything that he says again.
Good advice.
We need just to...
Shabbat shalom.
Yeah, separate.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Good night. Good night,
Shabbat shalom all.
Yeah, we return next week to our Torah study and making our way through observations. Good night, everyone.
Good.
Good night. Good night.